Chapter 697. When the assistant heard the name, he felt a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it. Especially her financial situation, marriage status, private life status, and work situation. In short, all of them must be checked. The assistant understood and quickly asked, "Master O, is there any other schedule that is particularly important? Do you need me to arrange anything?" However, O Ming did not answer, and the phone had been hung up. The assistant felt even more depressed. He deliberately opened the book and looked at O Ming's schedule. It seemed like there wasn't any itinerary that was particularly important. Strange, however, O Ming's mind was notoriously difficult to guess. If he guessed incorrectly, he might even make him unhappy. After thinking about it, the assistant decided to play dumb. Since he didn't answer the question, there must be a reason. When O Ming wanted him to do something, he would ask. Why should he ask so much? The assistant suddenly felt very witty, and then went to check the so-called ukulele. O Ming had a suite on the top floor of the capital branch. When he moved in again, many people were very surprised. However, no one dared to ask, and they left in a hurry after dealing with it. O Ming lay on the bed, closed his eyes, and felt very tired. It had been 4 years, and he had lost too many things. The phone rang, and it was the assistant. "Master O, I found out that Lily came to the capital 4 years ago and now works in the Electronic Science and Technology Department of Xingfeng Group. She is just an ordinary IT worker. 2 or 3 years ago, after renting a room with a girl for a year, she was cheated of all her money, and the loss reached more than 1 million yuan. In addition to her poor health, she spent a lot of money. She is currently single and lives alone. It seems that she used to work in Kingstown. According to her colleagues, this woman is likely to have had a miscarriage, and her physical condition is very poor. Cheated of all her money. When O Ming was supporting her, he hardly gave her any money. Basically, Lily got whatever she wanted, and she didn't ask him for money. According to O Ming's memory, the money she had received might not be as much as 1 million yuan. The loss reached more than 1 million yuan, that is to say, all her money had been cheated, so how did she survive? What about socially? She is very popular and has a high EQ. She always smiles when she meets people, but she also has a personality and is very straightforward. But because of this, her boss doesn't pay much attention to her. Now in Xingfeng, her annual salary is between 100,000 and 150,000 yuan. She is also responsible for some small things and doesn't have many big projects in hand. Yeah, O Ming responded, and then he didn't say anything else. The assistant waited for a moment and realized that O Ming wasn't going to say anything else. Then, he said, "If there's nothing else, I'll hang up first. Help me check her address and send it to me." When the assistant heard this, he seemed to understand something. So, what was more important than seeing Li Xiqing was picking up girls? TSK, a typical example of valuing a lover over a friend. Although he thought so, the assistant didn't have the guts to say it out loud. He answered honestly, yes. After O Ming hung up, the driver called. Chapter 698. Lily felt that she was so unlucky today. Not only was she targeted by Su Jing, but she also had to take the computer out of her busy schedule and was hit by a car. Not only that, but she also met O Ming. Life was always like this. When people were unlucky, even a sip of cold water would get stuck in the teeth. Many parts of her body were wrapped in gauze, and she looked very embarrassed and miserable. When she returned to the company, the security guards all knew her. One of them had a good relationship with her. When he saw Lily coming back, he quickly surrounded her and was shocked. "What happened to you? What the hell?" He actually fell to this state. Although he was already next to her, he did not dare to touch her at all. He opened his hand slightly and looked shocked. Yu Lily smiled brightly and waved her hand. What's with your expression? Haven't you seen a car accident like me? No way, you went to help Sister Sue get the computer and had a car accident. Hey, don't say it. Yu Lily looked like she could not bear to look back. The computer is broken, directly broken, and the person has not paid me yet. Wait for me to go back first, and then I will tell you what happened. The security guard looked distressed. Lily, you are like this. Don't go up. Sister Sue's temper is so bad, and she will certainly not stop scolding you because you are injured. Why don't you go down first, and I will go and talk to you? No, you do your thing. Go ahead. Yu Lily waved her hand and quickly walked in. But the smell of ointment was very eye-catching. Many people saw Yu Lily like this, and they would exclaim and ask, Lily, what's wrong with you? Along the way, Yu Lily smiled so much that her face was stiff. Finally, she arrived at Su Jing's office. She rang the doorbell and went in. Su Jing was scolding a newcomer with harsh words. Yu Lily had been in Xingfeng for less than a year. Su Jing was the head of the department, and she was famous for being a tigress. She would scold a newcomer without saying a word, and once scolded him until he resigned. Although Yu Lily was very popular in this department and was very popular among her colleagues, she couldn't let go of herself in front of this woman. The reason was just that she was beautiful. As a rich woman in her 30s, Su Jing was already married. At home, she was also a strong wife and a weak husband. Half a month ago, when her husband came to pick her up from work, he took a few glances at Yu Lily and was slapped by Su Jing in public. Since then, Su Jing had been picking on her in different ways. She was so scared that she didn't even dare to put on makeup anymore. However, Yu Lily's show of weakness did not make Su Jing restrain herself much. Instead, he was targeting her more and more. With a sigh, Yu Lily limped in and called out, Sister Sue. Su Jing turned to look at her. Seeing her like that, she said in a bitter voice, Oh, isn't this the belle of our department, Yu Lily? What's wrong with you? How did you end up like this? Sour. There was an indescribable jealousy in his tone. Yu Lily silently bowed her head and said, I was hit by a car on the way back to get the computer. Su Jing was shocked, and her first reaction was to blurt out, What about the computer? Yu Lily felt a little uncomfortable. This woman, she didn't ask me if I was okay now, but her first reaction was like this. The computer was damaged by a car. Chapter 699. Such a voice was full of disdain and contempt. Moreover, Su Jing was still so provocative. Such a sharp tone was even more unbearable. Anyone who heard such words would not feel good, let alone a woman like Yu Lily. Yu Lily seemed to see something strange. She glanced at her and sneered, Isn't it just 120,000 yuan? Any bag I take out is more expensive than your computer. Everyone in the company knew that Yu Lily had a lot of bags, and each of them was a luxury product, which was incompatible with her usual clothes. But with Yu Lily's usual temperament and aura, it was very suitable. At the beginning, everyone still complained, but over time, they got used to it. At the same time, such a situation also made many people very envious. Su Jing was one of them, but she couldn't afford it, and her husband couldn't afford it either. At this moment, hearing Yu Lily's words, she immediately became angry and shouted, What kind of attitude is this? What kind of attitude is this? You think you're great? I was hit like this. Are you fucking blind? Yu Lily's attitude angered Su Jing even more, and she roared, I am your boss. It's normal to ask you to do something. It's because you are my boss that I help you do these things outside of work. This is your own personal computer, not the company's. You forced me to use my working time to get it, causing me to have a car accident. What about this account? Ha, it's funny. Do you have any evidence to prove that your car accident was caused by me? Lily heard the words, raised her eyebrows and sneered. Do you have any evidence to prove that your computer was broken in my hands? Su Jing was furious and shouted, is this the attitude you should have when talking to your boss? Boss? You're just a department head. Do you really think you're so great? Lily looked at her coldly without any warmth. When I was the director of the O Group's clothing store, you were still in some remote corner. Lily couldn't stand it. She was already angry, and in the past few years, she had been extremely unlucky. She was cheated of all her money by her good friend, and it was not easy to find a job with a decent income, but she met such a boss. Su Jing did not cross the line in the past, so Lily tolerated it. However, in the past half a month, Su Jing had become more and more outrageous and disgusting. Since she was going to be scolded anyway, she might as well avenge the people in the company. When Su Jing heard this, she laughed out loud. What are you talking about? Oh clan. Do you know what that place is? You haven't even finished your university studies, yet you want to be the director of the O Group. Ha 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 ha. Lily dropped out of school when she was in her junior year, which was her eternal regret. At this moment, being brought up by Su Jing as a joke had undoubtedly stepped on Lily's sore spot. Lily looked at Su Jing coldly, and the temperature in her eyes was getting lower and lower. She sneered sympathetically and said, no wonder your husband stared at me last time. It turns out that you look like a zombie when you smile. With your size 43 horse face, you need to use double hyaluronic acid, right? Chapter 700. Lily was injured. When she stepped back, her wound was pulled and she felt a burning pain. But she quickly avoided it. Lily looked at Su Jing and sneered, the zombie is angry. What do you want to do? Kill me. Su Jing's face was even more ugly. She turned around and picked up the stapler on the table, smashing it toward Lily's face. Lily reached out to block it, and the stapler hit her hand, causing a sudden pain. Then, Su Jing rushed toward her and grabbed her hair. Ah! Lily felt more pain when she was pressed. When she looked at Su Jing's ferocious face, she was even more annoyed and shouted, are you King sick? Help! The door of Su Jing's office was not closed, so people quickly ran in from outside. Everyone saw that they were fighting together and quickly came forward to pull them apart. Su Jing's movements were getting bigger and bigger, but Lily couldn't. She felt a burning pain in her body. She looked down and saw that some of the gauze was bleeding again. King retard. Lily clenched her teeth in pain and held her breath in her heart. She picked up the stapler on the ground and threw it towards Su Jing's face. Paw! The stapler landed firmly on Su Jing's chin with a dull thud. Su Jing screamed and covered her chin. She was in so much pain that she burst into tears and shouted, Lily, you bitch, you broke my new computer and hit me. Do you think that you can use the male colleagues in the company to stand on your side just because you are beautiful? People around heard this and looked at each other. Everyone, help me get justice. Lily wants to keep my 120,000 yuan computer for herself. It took me a long time to save up money to buy it. It took me half a month to send it from the United States. I haven't used it yet, but it was stolen by her. She said it was a car accident. Bah! It is clear that she wants to steal my computer and make up a trick. The colleagues who had a good relationship with Lily all looked at Lily. One of them asked, Lily, is it true? Lily was so angry that she laughed. On her beautiful and delicate face, there was contempt and disdain. Lily looked at Su Jing and asked, How many kilograms of hyaluronic acid did you inject? Not only is your face big, but your skin is also so thick. If you remove the powder, you will probably have a natural hornet's nest. Su Jing couldn't stand it when others insulted her face. Especially when Yu Lily said all kinds of insults without a single dirty word. She was so angry that her body trembled. She was so excited that she was about to stand up. Su Jing almost rushed up to hit her, but soon she rolled her eyes and seemed to think of something. She sneered, "Yu Lily, do you know how long you will be sentenced for a crime worth 120,000 yuan? At least a few years. I originally wanted to give you a chance to repent and reflect. Ha, I didn't expect you to be so ungrateful. Then don't blame me for being impolite. Yu Lily, so don't blame me for being rude. Either you compensate and settle it in private, or I will see you in court. A crime of more than 100,000 is enough for you to suffer." Su Jing stood there, looking domineering. She looked at her with hatred in her eyes. Yu Lily felt ridiculous. When she was about to say something, a security guard came in and said, "Yu Lily, someone is looking for you." Behind the security guard was a middle-aged man carrying a box. When the box was opened, it was a badly damaged laptop. Chapter 701. "Excuse me, which one of you is Miss Yu Lily?" "I am," Yu Lily responded. "I am the director of the distributor of this computer company. My surname is Wu. Just now, a gentleman sent this machine to our testing department for testing. After verifying the serial number and the internal information of the model, we found that this machine is a second-hand mobile phone we sold half a month ago, worth 48,888 yuan. But I heard that you asked the gentleman for the price of a brand new machine, 120,000 yuan. The gentleman thought it was very unreasonable, so he entrusted me to verify it and report the situation to you. Second-hand machine. More than 40,000 yuan. Yu Lily was stunned, looked at Su Jing, and blurted out, "Didn't you say 120,000 yuan? Are you lying to me?" Su Jing's face suddenly changed, and she roared, "Nonsense. More than 40,000 yuan. I obviously bought it for 120,000 yuan. Now it was broken by this woman, and I haven't used it a few times." The man's expression was a little strange, and he said, "Are you the original owner of this machine?" Su Jing's face changed slightly, but she quickly calmed down, nodded, and said, "Yes." The man took out a piece of paper from his pocket, opened it, and said, "Miss Su Jing, right?" Su Jing did not speak, looked at his hands that were opening the paper, and the original expression on her face suddenly changed. "This is the record list of your purchase from our company half a month ago, with your ID number and your autograph on it. The total price is 48,888 yuan. For the time being, there is no brand new model in our domestic branch. If necessary, it needs to be imported directly from the United States." Yu Lily opened her eyes wide, took the bill, and saw the name of the transaction, Su Jing. And the signature on it, Yu Lily had seen countless times. Isn't it Su Jing's autograph? That is to say, this computer was actually purchased by Su Jing, and she lied to me. She wanted to cheat me of my money. Yu Lily saw it clearly and was furious. She held the paper, pointed to the autograph, and shouted, "Su Jing, how do you explain this?" Su Jing's face changed greatly, and she was speechless for a while. Everyone was speechless, and the way they looked at Su Jing had changed a lot. Just now, it was true that Yu Lily broke Su Jing's computer, and it was also true that Yu Lily had a car accident. Seeing Su Jing's angry look, everyone subconsciously thought that it was true. However, no one had expected such a sudden turn of events. What is going on? Just now, Su Jing said that she wanted to let Yu Lily go to jail, but now, Yu Lily became the victim. What? It turns out that she wants to cheat money. Isn't Sister Sue very rich? Why would she want to cheat Lily's money? Hey, I'm afraid it's not as simple as cheating money. She just said that you Lily stole her computer, which is worth more than 100,000 yuan. She will be sentenced for a long time. Huh, what's the big deal now? Su Jing herself has become a fraud, and the evidence is conclusive. Chapter 702. And the person who came to deliver the computer, after seeing such a scene, took out a thick yellow envelope from his satchel and said, "This is the compensation that the gentleman just gave you. It is 50,000 yuan in total. Please count it." Then, he handed it to Yu Lily. Yu Lily was so angry that she grabbed the envelope and saw the 5 dozen bills in it at a glance. After counting out 1,100 yuan, she threw the rest to Su Jing and said, "I will compensate you, but there is a lot of debt between us. Now there are witnesses and material evidence. Everyone knows that you want to cheat me. The amount of fraud is as high as 100,000 yuan. Sister Sue, do you know how to sentence you?" Su Jing's face became more ugly and suddenly became as pale as paper. Seeing this, Yu Lily's smile on her face became more bright and she said, "What? Weren't you very arrogant just now? Why are you so quiet now? Didn't you say you were going to sue me?" "Sue me, Su Jing. It's okay to be a bad person, but it's not good to be so blatant, right?" Obviously, Yu Lily was more arrogant and domineering than before. The sudden changes of the situation, one after another, made Su Jing unable to guard against it. Originally, she wanted to use this second-hand computer to frame Yu Lily, saying that she had stolen her computer parts, so that she could be charged with theft. Just now, when he heard that she had broken the computer, he was even more surprised. Wasn't this coquettish fox arrogant? She would send her to prison and see how she could be arrogant. But she would never have thought that Yu Lily had a helper. Such a helper was actually able to directly invite the dealer over and expose her plan in front of everyone, causing Su Jing to lose all her face. This slap on the face was so painful that it was burning. Originally, she thought that the victory was in her grasp, but it was reversed in an instant. This made Su Jing, who had always been independent and had a sense of superiority, unable to accept it at all. Her face suddenly became serious and she said, "How can you prove that this computer is mine?" The person from the dealer hadn't left yet. Hearing Su Jing's words, he immediately said, "We have the data records of the hard disk and CPU inside, as well as the matching serial numbers and codes. If you don't think this is your computer, we can check the system. It's very difficult to fake." Su Jing was speechless, and her expression turned even uglier. While she was speaking, she heard Yu Lily's voice. Everyone looked over and saw that she was on the phone. After she reported the address, she said, "There is a supervisor in the computer department named Su Jing." Only then did everyone realize that Yu Lily was calling the police. No one had expected Yu Lily to be so straightforward, including Su Jing. Su Jing's first reaction was to pounce over and shout, "Bitch, what are you doing?" Yu Lily was injured. At the same time, because of Su Jing's sudden attack, she was not prepared at all. Being pounced on like this, he staggered and took a small step back. However, because of this, the phone also fell to the ground, and the interface displayed the 3 numbers 110. Just looking at it made people feel shocked. Su Jing picked up the phone and said, "It's okay. I'm sorry." Chapter 703. Su Jing roared, "What do you want?" "I want to call the police." "Didn't you see it?" Yu Lily spread her hands and looked innocent. "But the phone was hung up by you. You made me have to call again. It's not appropriate for you to do this." Su Jing gritted her teeth and said, "Yu Lily. Hey, what's wrong? Yu Lily smiled, which made Su Jing tremble with anger. Su Jing calmed down, took a deep breath, and said, "Let's settle this in private." "What do you want?" Yu Lily sneered and looked at her coldly. "I don't want anything. I just want to call the police and sue you for malicious fraud." "Don't go too far. How much money do you want? Tell me." Yu Lily ignored her words and continued to say, "As for other things, such as you used working hours to invest in stocks, forced the people under you to do personal things during working hours, and then forced us to work overtime and so on. Everyone knows about these things, but you are so good at hiding it from the higher-ups. The higher-ups don't know about it yet. Now that the boss knows about it, I'm afraid he can't agree with your character, can he? Right, Mr. Li?" While talking, he looked at the door behind Su Jing. When Su Jing heard that, her face suddenly changed. She turned her head and saw the big boss, Mr. Li, standing behind her. His middle-aged fat face was very ugly. Mr. Li came in and looked at Su Jing's face, which was so ugly that it was almost sweating. He shouted wildly, "What the hell is going on? Everyone is gathered here. Don't you need to work? Don't you need to work?" The strong smell of ointment on Yu Lily's body and the bleeding wound wrapped in gauze were very eye-catching. Mr. Li saw Yu Lily's clothes and asked, What's the matter?" Yu Lily gave a brief account of what had happened, but when it came to Su Jing's actions, she added a lot of embellishment. Several times, Su Jing wanted to interrupt, but Yu Lily did not give her a chance to do so. Mr. Li also deterred Su Jing with his eyes, so that she could not say a word. In the end, Yu Lily was a little thirsty. She shrugged and spread her hands. "If you don't believe me, you can ask them. Everyone on the scene is my witness." There is no doubt about Su Jing's ability, but her character is really intolerable. "Mr. Li, I advise you to consider replacing her. Didn't you find that this department changes people very frequently? It has a lot to do with this woman, but because this woman is your wife's cousin, no one dares to say anything." When Chief Li heard that, he got even angrier. "Work is work, relationship is relationship. Do you think I promoted her because of her relationship? Isn't it?" Yu Lily spread her hands again, looking helpless. Someone nudged her, hinting for her to keep quiet. But Yu Lily smiled and said, "I don't want to work here anyway. I know you won't fire her. Working for this kind of person is simply asking for trouble. Mr. Li, I quit." Li Lily was speechless. Yu Lily's straightforward words made everyone in the room secretly applaud in their hearts. But in front of Chief Li and Su Jing, everyone did not dare to be obvious. Chief Li's face became more ugly. When he was about to say something, Yu Lily said, "However, it is a fact that Su Jing wanted to cheat me. If you want to settle it privately, I don't want money. I just want Su Jing to apologize to me. Otherwise, I can only give her a taste of her own medicine." Dash. Chapter 704. Apologize. Apologize to this bitch. Su Jing looked strange and said sarcastically, "Do you think I don't know that you now owe a lot of debt? You have no money and you have to live like a princess. Who can stand you? You poor ghost, how much money do you want? Just tell me directly." Yu Lily sneered and said, "I want your husband. You should give him to me. Don't pretend to be rich. Apologize to me." When Su Jing heard that, she was even more furious and rushed in the direction of Yu Lily. The people around were all shocked and rushed forward to stop her. Yu Lily stood in the same place and looked at her mobile phone lying quietly on the ground not far behind Su Jing. She turned around, walked to Su Jing's desk, picked up the phone, and turned on the speaker. After pressing 2 numbers, Su Jing's face changed and shouted, "How dare you! Do you want to see if I dare? Yu Lily pressed the last number, put the microphone next to her ear, and raised her eyebrows provocatively. Apologize. No. Mr. Lee was afraid. He went forward to take Yu Lily's phone and hung up directly. He looked at Su Jing and shouted, apologize. Su Jing was shocked and couldn't believe it. Brother-in-law, you were in the wrong in the first place, so you should apologize. Didn't you see how badly Xiao Yu was hurt because of your computer? What if there are scars all over a girl's body? And the computer has been compensated to you. You should apologize to her. Su Jing was obviously not convinced. She looked at Mr. Lee and said unwillingly, I don't want to. Hearing this, Mr. Lee's face darkened and he warned, do you really want to go to jail? Go to jail? Who would want to go to jail? But Su Jing was not reconciled. Why should I apologize to this bitch who seduces people everywhere? Since she came, almost all the people in the company were around her. No matter men or women. Relying on the tricks of a fox, she pretended to be a bitch. She was not reconciled, and she just couldn't see her doing well. Either you apologize, or I'll call the police. As she spoke, she picked up the phone and teased, it's just going to jail. Sister Sue isn't afraid, right? Manager Lee's face also darkened. Su Jing, do you really think I don't know what you're doing in the dark? Do you really want me to tell you everything? Su Jing felt even more humiliated. Not only were her colleagues and subordinates not on her side, but even her brother-in-law did not support her. Why? What's so good about you, Lily? Su Jing was so angry that her eyes turned red and tears welled up in an instant. However, under Manager Lee's warning gaze, she still lowered her head and whispered, I'm sorry. What? I didn't hear anything. Yu Lily was still holding the microphone in her hand. She put one hand next to her ear to make a trumpet. Can you say that again? Su Jing was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. She calmed down and said in a serious voice, I'm sorry. Chapter 705. Yu Lily's provocative words made many people at the scene laugh, and they were secretly happy. But the boss was here, and Su Jing was also in front of them. Except for Yu Lily, no one else dared to smile. Yu Lily's attitude made Su Jing almost mad, and she roared, don't go too far. Yu Lily seemed to be scared, and she turned her head sideways with a look of disgust. Yu Lily seemed to be frightened. She turned her head sideways with a look of disgust, but she quickly turned her head back and said, look, isn't it quite loud? I really didn't hear what you just said. My ears are not very good. You know, why don't you just speak like you used to? Why do you have to pretend to be gentle? I'm sorry. Su Jing roared, and her eyes were about to crack, and she looked terrible. Yu Lily looked scared, patted her chest, and said with a frightened face, if you don't want to, then don't. Why do you have to scare people? Don't you know that people can be scared to death? What the F***ck? You not only cheat, but also want to kill people. While talking, Yu Lily had picked up the phone again. Yu Lily turned on the speaker and pressed 2 numbers. Almost everyone could hear it clearly. Su Jing took a deep breath and said quickly, I'm sorry, Yu Lily, I shouldn't have framed you, I shouldn't have targeted you, please forgive me. Yu Lily just pressed the 3rd number, and before it was connected, she hung up. Looking at Su Jing, Yu Lily smiled slightly and raised her eyebrows, are you sincere? Su Jing wanted to kill her, but at this time, she still nodded against her conscience, sincere. Go, you are so fake. Yu Lily sneered, but I am a generous person, and I will forgive you. After that, she looked at Mr. Lee, I don't want to work anymore. Please let me go. I can't do work with my injuries. Mr. Lee quickly said, I know you have a grudge against the company. Now, I announce that Su Jing will be fired. When such a voice fell, everyone was shocked. What? Fire Su Jing? People around looked at each other and couldn't believe it. Even Su Jing herself had not expected such an outcome. No, brother-in-law, however, before Su Jing's voice had finished, she had been interrupted by Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee looked at Yu Lily and said in a high voice, "Little Yu, stay at home and recuperate. Don't worry about the company. I will give you half a month to adjust your vacation. When you come back, you will be the head of this department. What do you think?" Such a result was undoubtedly dropping a heavy bomb on Su Jing once again. Su Jing stood dumbfounded on the spot. She turned pale with fright and shouted, "Brother-in-law, how can you do this?" Mr. Li ignored her directly and looked at Xiao Zhang of the HR department and said, "Go through the resignation procedures for Su Jing. Such a person will cause public anger in the company. It's better to ask her to leave early." After a pause, he looked at Su Jing and said, "Don't you want a child? You always complain about being busy with work. Now I'll give you this time to have a child and raise the child. Adjust yourself well and get ready to have a child." Chapter 706. Why not? The company is mine. I can keep whoever I want. Mr. Li's face darkened. Also, didn't I tell you not to call me brother-in-law in the company? It's not good. Mr. Li's heartlessness not only made Su Jing feel disheartened, but also Yu Lily herself was confused. What's going on? Mr. Li wants to keep me, but not Su Jing. Su Jing, who has been a supervisor for several years, is fired. Is this for real? Yu Lily felt like she was dreaming. She had done that and provoked him, but he still gave her a promotion. It was like seeing a ghost. Yu Lily was dumbfounded, but the others were already cheering. Yu Lily is a supervisor. Damn, if Yu Lily can't be a supervisor, who can be a supervisor? Don't forget who helped you with the case in CG Village. Yes, and the case of Wanli Technology. Damn, if it weren't for her, I would have been killed by Su Jing. Ah, you have all been helped. I thought I was the only one who got benefits. I was wondering if Lily was secretly in love with me. Bah. You think too much. Lily is a goddess. Do you know what a goddess is? She can only be seen from a distance and not played with. The discussion around her sounded, and Yu Lily continued to be in a state of confusion. Su Jing protested and shouted, "How can you do this? Who is Yu Lily? Can she lead this department well? Brother-in-law, don't be fooled by her beauty." That's right. You mean, I only look at her appearance and not at her ability? Mr. Li's face darkened. If that's the case, you would have been fired long ago. Do you think I will keep you in the company for so long? Do you really think I don't know what you are doing in secret? Su Jing, don't blame me for offending you. Su Jing was stunned when she heard that. Mr. Li ignored her, looked at Yu Lily and said, "Xiao Yu, you go back first. Come back after a while. It will not be good if there are scars on your body." Yu Lily suddenly came to her senses and stammered, "Mr. Li, are you serious?" Of course, Mr. Li's expression softened a little. "I've seen your ability. The report you wrote a few days ago was very good. I believe you can do it. Also, you seem to be very popular. Keep it up in the future." Only then did Yu Lily completely recover. Her face was full of joy, and her heart was inexplicably touched. With Su Jing at the top, Yu Lily hadn't gotten any big projects, and she hadn't had any opportunities to stand out. She thought she could only show off in front of her colleagues. Who would have thought? Yu Lily nodded excitedly and shouted in a loud voice, "Definitely." Mr. Lee nodded in satisfaction. "Go back first, I'll ask the driver to send you." "No need, I can go back by myself." "Yes, you can go downstairs. I'll ask the driver to wait for you at the door." Yu Lily was too lazy to take a taxi, so she nodded and said, "Thank you, Mr. Lee." Mr. Lee's eyes were even more curved, flashing a trace of strange light that no one noticed. Then he pressed the elevator and went upstairs again. Chapter 707. Among them, the one who was the most upset should be Su Jing. When Su Jing heard the cheers of the crowd, she was full of disbelief. Especially when she saw that they were so happy and proud, she was even more angry. With a scream, Su Jing rushed in the direction of Yu Lily and shouted, "Bitch, you must have used some bad means. You must have slept with him. Otherwise, how could you be promoted? There are many people more qualified than you. Anyone can be promoted, but why you?" The voice was fierce, and the expression was terrible. Yu Lily's colleagues, who had a good relationship with her, immediately stood in front of her and protected her. Two male colleagues grabbed Su Jing from both sides. Su Jing was even more angry and shouted, "I heard that you used to be the mistress of a rich second generation. Later, you were abandoned by the rich second generation because you couldn't have children. You must be very happy to be a mistress for so many years. Bah, now you actually use this kind of dirty means to deal with my brother-in-law. Yu Lily, you are so disgusting, bitch." Su Jing's words sounded so convincing as if they were the truth. When Yu Lily heard it, her face slowly sank. How did Su Jing know this kind of thing? She obviously didn't tell anyone. However, with the previous record, the credibility of Su Jing's words had been greatly reduced. How could the colleagues around her believe Su Jing's words? Hearing Su Jing's words, someone said sarcastically, "Why, a beautiful woman must be a mistress of a rich second generation. That's right. A woman like you can only raise a useless old pervert, an old gigolo. Ha ha ha. Yes, you are ugly and you blame others who are beautiful. What the hell?" When Su Jing announced that she was fired, this group of people felt very proud. At this time, there was such an opportunity to hit Su Jing, how could they not seize it? "It's true." Su Jing shouted angrily, "Yu Lily, this woman, how clean do you think she is? She was just a whore who would sleep with a man for money. I really don't know what you like about this kind of person, this kind of bitch." Ha! Yu Lily chuckled and deliberately made a charming look. However, when combined with the injuries all over his body, it looked very awkward no matter how one looked at it. Yu Lily winked at Su Jing and said, "If you are beautiful, you can sell your body. As for someone like you, I don't think anyone would want you even if you sold your body. Hey, whether I sell it or not has nothing to do with you. If you have the time, why don't you save some money for plastic surgery?" As he spoke, he looked at her sympathetically and said, "Why don't I help you a little? Here's 1,000 yuan. Here, take one." He crumpled the bill and threw it at Su Jing. This kind of naked humiliation caused Su Jing to tremble with anger. You, it's not enough. There's nothing I can do. I don't have any left. This is all I have. I still need to heal. Hey, why don't you ask someone else for some? Beg, what kind of person would ask someone for money? Yu Lily's words were undoubtedly lethal to a woman like Su Jing, who had always prided herself on being a wealthy woman. Being held back by two male colleagues, Su Jing felt like she was suffering from internal injuries. Chapter 708. When she went downstairs, she found that Mr. Lee's driver was already waiting for her downstairs. After being sent home, Yu Lily took out the key and opened the door. This was a relatively old community, the rent was relatively cheap, and the community environment was safe, so Lily had lived here for 2 years. The door was a relatively thick security door, and when she opened it, she saw a small living room. This was a single apartment, with 1 bedroom and 1 living room, but there was only a small sofa in it, and there was not even a TV. Not far from the sofa was a small computer desk with a notebook on it, and behind it was a small table for eating. After putting these things, there was only a walking path. The kitchen and the toilet were connected, and the total area was less than 3 square meters. But the decoration was very beautiful and clean, very leisurely and modest. Lily stretched, took out the medicine from her bag, put it on the small table, and then walked into the room. Just as she opened the door, Lily immediately froze in place. In the room, there was a single bed, a wardrobe, a bookshelf, and a wall full of photos. However, these were very familiar furnishings, not enough to cause Lily to be shocked. What made Lily freeze in place was the uninvited guest in front of her. On the single bed that should have been clean and tidy, there was a man lying on it. The man was tall and lying on the bed at the moment. He seemed to have fallen asleep, but at this moment, he noticed Lily coming in and opened his eyes. His dark brown eyes were tired and sleepy, and his peach blossom eyes were blurred. He looked at Lily, but she couldn't see his emotions. Lily was stunned, and soon her face changed. Subconsciously, she looked at the wall full of photos. The photo wall was full of photos of her and Ming. In addition to the group photos, there were also photos of Ming. All the photo frames were hung up, and the wall opposite the bed was densely hung. Lily's heart suddenly jumped, and she had the feeling of a runaway child caught by an adult. She was embarrassed and guilty, but at the same time, she couldn't help but feel happy. The man on the bed lifted the quilt, got out of bed, and slowly sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her with a pair of eyes. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Lily stood at the door and stared at him for a long time before she opened her mouth and asked, "Why are you here?" When Ming heard that, his lips curled into a smile, but he didn't say anything. He slowly took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it up. Then he looked up at her, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. There was a strong sense of sarcasm and self-deprecation in his smile. There was also an indescribable feeling. Lily looked at his smile and felt her heart ache. "What are you laughing at? What's so funny?" Lily wanted to ask him, but she saw him take out a notebook from under the quilt. Seeing the cover of the notebook, Lily was shocked and subconsciously looked at the photo wall. Under it was a desk. There should have been a notebook on the desk. That was the notebook she used to draw on. Now, it was empty. Ming just flashed the notebook, and Lily's face became even paler. Chapter 709. The strength was so great that the photo frame on it suddenly fell down. The sound of breaking was deafening in this narrow room. Ming took a long step and walked in front of Lily. His lips were curved with an evil and contemptuous smile. His pair of peach blossom eyes were slightly narrowed. He looked at her face and exhaled a long puff of smoke. Then, he pushed her hard, without pity, past her, and strode away. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word. Lily's eyes were red and slightly painful. This kind of pain fiercely pulled the scar on her heart that had been faintly painful for 4 years, but in the past 4 years, it had never been so painful. Enduring the pain, she stepped on the glass on the ground to pick up the book. On the book, there were broken glass shards, which suddenly pierced into her fingers, making her feel painful. She opened the book, and one of the pages inside, impressively had a horizontal label. On it was a picture of a woman holding a dagger in her hand, and she personally stabbed it into her stomach. Below, there was blood. Next to it was the words, "I am pregnant with Ming's child, but I don't want to keep it. What should I do? Then don't keep it. I went out to buy medicine, and the doctor said to take it for 3 days. On the 2nd day, I broke up with him. I don't want to be with him. This kind of man is not someone I can handle at all. He is too abnormal, too dictatorial, too F***ing. I want to be free. Let's go, you Lily. The next day, he didn't agree with her proposal to break up. She was angry and quarreled with him. At first, Oh Ming just coldly warned her, but in the end, he pressed her on the bed, and Yu Lily's stomach hit the edge of the bed. At that time, he pressed her down and put his knee on her stomach, warning her and noticing her abnormality. Later, he found that she was bleeding. A lot of blood. At that time, Oh Ming was scared and stunned. What was Yu Lily like at that time? She held her stomach, and her face was blue and white with pain, but when she saw him like that, she inexplicably had a kind of revenge pleasure. For 3 years, she had been kept by him for 3 years. In those 3 years, many people outside knew that she was Oh Ming's girlfriend, and at the same time, many people knew that she was kept by him. A kept woman. What a disgusting word. Because of these 2 words, she received a lot of supercilious looks. He could finally be free. Yu Lily was bleeding at that time, and her body was already covered in cold sweat. His face was pale, but he let out an extremely cruel laugh. Such laughter was not only cruel to Oh Ming, but even Yu Lily herself had never imagined that she could laugh like that. Oh Ming, do you know? I'm pregnant. Oh Ming was stunned. He looked at the large pool of blood below her and was at a loss of what to do. Your child has been squashed to death by you. Are you happy? Happy. She didn't know if Oh Ming would be happy, but she herself wasn't as happy as she had imagined. On the contrary, there was an indescribable sadness. Her child, her first child. How magical, there was actually a small life inside her body. But now, for the sake of her so-called freedom, she was going to eradicate this little life. She cried and laughed at the same time. Looking at Oh Ming, she fainted from the pain. When he woke up, he was in the middle of surgery. The doctor said there were 2 gestational sacs. Chapter 7:10. The smoke rose slowly, with a light smell of tobacco, and the whole car was a bit depressed. Oh Ming sat in the car, with an ashtray in front of him. There were already 4 or 5 cigarette butts in the ashtray. Looking at the dark sky ahead, Oh Ming's mood was indescribably empty. Just in the afternoon, when he just saw the photos on the wall, he thought, however, it was just what he thought. Shock, anger, and unspeakable sorrow. It turned out that his children were not killed by himself. However, this fact was more hurtful than Yu Lily's words in the past. How much hatred did he have to kill his first child, his own pair of twins? How much did he hate him that he didn't even want his own children? She had been with him for 3 years. 3 years, even a dog would have feelings, let alone a person. Oh Ming looked at the sky in the distance, and in his dark brown eyes, there was only indifference. Putting out the cigarette, Oh Ming started the car and slowly drove on the road. From now on, the original Oh Ming was completely dead. After Li Xiqing took over the company's affairs, the company's performance was much better than before. So much that Su Qinxi was proud, but also indescribably frustrated. She thought that she had done a good job. Looking at the quarterly report in her hand, Su Qinxi felt a bit of a headache. The children were running around in the living room, chasing each other and playing until they were all sweaty. Su Qinxi put the document back and looked at the time. It was almost 6:00. She raised her voice and said, "Quiet down and rest. Come and sit for 10 minutes." Li Jianrui chased after Li Mosin with a smile, suddenly stopped and shouted, "123, blockhead, don't talk and don't move. Li Mosen and Li Jianqian stopped at once. Both of them were panting, but they really didn't move. Li Jianqian still maintained the running posture, and Li Mosen looked like he wanted to speak. Such a strange scene, Su Qianxi couldn't help laughing and shouted, "The password is invalid." Li Mosen and Li Jianqian suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, trotted over to the sofa where Su Qianxi was and sat down. Li Jianhua stuck out her tongue and ran toward Su Qianxi. She shouted, "Mom, why isn't Dad home yet?" Su Qianxi poked her nose and said, "Girls are not allowed to talk with their tongues out. Be normal." "Can a boy do it?" Li Jianqian asked. "Boys can't do it either. You have to learn from your parents and be more normal, understand?" "But, Uncle Luo Zhan is also like this when he talks to Dad." Li Mosen looked puzzled. "Why can adults do it, but not children?" Hearing that, Su Qianxi paused and quickly said, "Uncle Luo is not a boy or a girl. He is a man, so he can make such a joke. You children should not learn bad things, understand?" Oh. The children didn't really understand. Anyway, the result was that Uncle Luo was a bad example. Li Jianhua widened her big round eyes, which were dark and bright. She asked again, "Mommy, when is Daddy coming back?" Chapter 7:11. Yes. The little girl held Su Qianxi's leg and looked at her with a smile. Her big black eyes were full of sparkling light. She asked, "Dad's birthday, will there be a cake?" Su Qianxi smiled and picked her up. "I have asked your dad to bring you a cake." Su Qianxi's words made the children's eyes light up. Especially Li Jianrui, who cheered and shouted, "I want strawberry flavor." "What should I do?" "I bought chocolate flavor." A voice came from afar, and Li Xiqing walked in slowly from the outside. He was tall, and compared with more than half a month ago, he looked much better than before. When he first came back, Li Xiqing was too thin. Li Jianrui heard Li Xiqing's words, and her eyes lit up. She ran in the direction of Li Xiqing and shouted, "Dad." Her short legs were running fast, and she ran in the direction of Li Xiqing, hugging his thigh. "Dad, hug." Li Xiqing held a big cake in one hand and held the little girl in the other. "Did you listen to the teacher today?" "Yes." "Kiss Dad." Li Jianhua reached out and hugged Li Xiqing's face. Li Xiqing's lips curled into a smile. "Happy birthday, Dad." Li Jianrui put one hand on Li Xiqing's shoulder and said with a smile, but her eyes couldn't help looking down at the cake in Li Xiqing's hand. "Dad, can I see the cake?" Li Xiqing laughed and gently knocked her forehead with his and said, "Eat first, and then you can eat the cake." "Okay." Li Jianrui cheered happily. "Then let's eat quickly." Li Mosen also walked over a little weakly and said, "Uncle, happy birthday." Lu Sa just came out and said, "It's time to eat. Go and tell Grandpa and Grandma to eat." "Happy birthday." Li Jianqian shouted with a red face and went to the kitchen to wash his hands. Su Qianxi walked to Li Mosen, put her soft hand on his head, and said softly, "Don't call me uncle, call me Dad." Li Mosen heard that and was stunned. He looked up at Su Qianxi, thinking that he had heard wrong. Su Qianxi looked at him, stroked his dark brown hair, and said, "Call me Mom, don't call me Auntie." Li Mosen's fair and tender skin blushed when he heard that. Li Mosen nodded his head vigorously. With a look of surprise on his face, he shouted, "Mom! Daddy! Happy birthday to Dad!" She had him look in Li Xiqing's direction. Li Mosen turned to look at Li Xiqing excitedly and shouted in a loud voice, "Dad, happy birthday!" Li Xiqing's eyes softened as he handed the cake to Su Qianxi. He bent down and picked up his son. Thank you, son. This is the best birthday present I've ever received. Son. Li Mosin felt like he was dreaming. He reached out and hugged Li Siqing, laughing happily. Dad, happy birthday. Li Siqing's smile widened as he walked toward the dining room with the little guy in his arms. Let's go eat. Li Jianqian watched from afar and felt inexplicably uncomfortable. This was his father, not Li Mosin's father. Mosin was not even a child of the Li family. Why did he have to call him father before him? He hadn't called him father yet. Thank you, son. This is the best birthday present I've ever received. Chapter 7:12. After dinner, the family gathered together. Su Qianxi led the children to sing the birthday song to Li Siqing, and the smile on Li Siqing's face became bigger and bigger. Just before the birthday song was finished, she heard the doorbell ring. Su Qianxi went to the door, opened the door, and saw Oh Ming, who looked a little travel-worn. With surprise in her eyes, Su Qianxi invited him in and shouted, "Honey, Oh Ming is here." Oh Ming. Li Siqing was also a little surprised. Just after the children's birthday song, Oh Ming appeared in Li Siqing's vision at the same time. Oh Ming was holding the specialties of the capital, a bottle of wine, and a box of something unknown, but it looked very high-end. At this moment, seeing Li Siqing, he handed everything to Li Siqing. Oh Ming saw him, chuckled, and his eyes were slightly red. The two men looked at each other and smiled. Immediately, they went forward and hugged each other. Hard. But it was not the kind of enthusiasm for women. Their hug was full of pride and domineering. Li Siqing, you are finally back. Oh Ming reached out and patted his back, his face full of emotion, and his eyes were slightly red. Li Siqing heard that and laughed. He directly punched Oh Ming's lower abdomen and said with a little anger, "You really have the nerve to say that. I have been waiting for you for half a month, and you lie to me every day." Oh Ming laughed at the same time, pushed him away, and gently punched him on the shoulder. "Aren't you back now? I also brought you a birthday gift, the limited edition watch you have always wanted. It's for you." Li Siqing heard that, chuckled, turned to look at the three little guys behind him, and said, "Call Uncle O." "Hello, Uncle O." The three little guys spoke at the same time, especially Li Jianrui, whose sweet voice was out of place with the two boys. At this moment, she did not look up, looked at the cake in front of her, pouted, and shouted, "Dad, come and blow out the candles. You see, the candles are almost falling into the cake, and we can't eat it later." Li Jianrui wasn't very old, but she was as smart as her brother. She was very eloquent with words. Furthermore, she watched TV shows with old Master Li and Qin Shuhua every day. She had learned most of the things that she shouldn't have learned. At this moment, what the little guy said made Li Siqing smile. "You help Dad." "No, I have to make a wish first before I can blow out the candles, and you have to blow it yourself, otherwise, the wish won't come true." Li Siqing pretended to look surprised and asked, "Really?" Seeing Li Siqing's expression, the little guy was convinced. He nodded with a serious face and said, "Of course it's true. Dad, come on. If the candle falls, the wish won't come true. You obviously want to eat cake." Li Jianqian unceremoniously undermined him with a look of disdain. Li Jianrui blushed and puffed up her cheeks. She said, "I didn't. Brother Mosin, am I that kind of person?" Li Mosin shook his head. "No. Humph. The audience's eyes are sharp." Li Jianrui made a face at Li Jianqian, then turned her head and continued to urge, "Hurry up, Dad." The little girl, who was less than 4 years old, called her father with a sweet voice. Oh Ming was full of envy when he heard it. Looking at Li Xiqing, he couldn't help but feel sad like a tide. Chapter 7:13. If his children were still alive, how old would they be now? Were they 2 boys or 2 girls? Or, like Li Xiqing, a boy and a girl? Oh Ming's mood swings had never been obvious, but this time, Li Xiqing clearly sensed his envy. Li Xiqing's eyes darkened, and he gently patted Oh Ming on the shoulder. Wait for me. Then, he coaxed the children and said, coming, coming. Walking over, he pretended to make a wish, and then blew out the candles. Li Xiqing took a long time to pull out the 31 candles. Under the children's eyes, he cut the cake. The children all cheered and shouted in unison, "Happy birthday!" Li Xiqing cut the cake, and Su Qianxi helped him. He distributed the cake to the children and looked up at Oh Ming. Come here, take a piece. Oh Ming chuckled, walked over, and sat down on the sofa. The elders were all behind. Captain Li looked at Oh Ming and said, Xiao Ming, you are not married yet. Do you have a girlfriend? Oh Ming smiled and shook his head slowly. No. You don't plan to find one? Not for the time being. Oh Ming smiled, took the cake from Li Xiqing, and handed it to Captain Li. Grandpa, eat the cake. Captain Li took the cake and asked with a smile, your father won't rush you. Aren't you in a hurry? Well, I told him to focus on his career first. His career has been very successful. You see, your O group has been like a rocket in recent years. Isn't that enough? A man still needs a family. Only when he has a family can he have a better career. Grandpa, why are you so interested in his relationship? Li Xiqing glanced at the old man and handed another piece of cake to Oh Ming. If you are free, help me take care of the children. I have something to say to Oh Ming. Captain Li stared at him, a little angry, and said, you little brat, now you think your grandfather is long-winded. Hey! Forget it, I can't care about you. Go. Oh Ming put down the cake, said goodbye to Captain Li, and followed Li Xiqing out the door. However, not long after Li Xiqing left, Li Jianqian suddenly put down the half-eaten cake in his hand. His white cheeks blushed as he ran after him and shouted, Dad, wait a minute. Li Xiqing was dazed, paused, and looked behind him. A short and small figure ran over. Although he was young, his body proportions were excellent. Her black curly hair fluttered in the wind. Looking at Li Xiqing, she blushed even more. Li Xiqing looked down at him, his eyes deeper, with a meaning that Li Jianqian could not understand at all. What did you call me? The little fellow's face turned even redder, and he weakly called out, Daddy. Li Xiqing's eyes became softer. His eyes curved slightly as he looked at Li Jianqian. Yeah. I also want to give you a birthday present. What present? Li Xiqing smiled and took 2 steps closer, his eyes shining with surprise. Although the little fellow did not understand, he knew that his father must be happy at this time. You are too tall. Squat down a little. Li Xiqing heard and squatted down. Li Jianqian went up and imitated Li Jianyue. He held Li Xiqing's head with both hands and kissed him on the cheek. Then, he turned around and ran, shouting, Happy birthday, Dad. Li Xiqing's eyes lit up. Dash. Chapter 7:14. The little guy ran inside, and when he walked to the sofa, his little body stumbled. Li Xiqing was shocked and couldn't help but remind him, be careful. The little guy turned his back to Li Xiqing, blushed, lowered his head, and trotted in. Oh Ming also laughed and teased, it's exactly the same as when you were a child. Is this the first time he called you Dad? Yes. Li Xiqing's lips curled, and his cold eyes became softer. The first time, it feels good. This little guy's personality is really cute. Could it be that he didn't call him on purpose so that he could give him a surprise on his birthday? Li Xiqing's dark eyes became softer. Turning his head, he found that Oh Ming's eyes were even more envious. There was a smile on his lips, but there was indescribable loneliness in his eyes. Perhaps others could not see Oh Ming's emotions, but Li Xiqing admitted that he had known him for more than 20 years and had long known him like the back of his hand. With such emotions, Li Xiqing couldn't help but frown, stepped forward, and said, "Let's go." The small lake not far from the door of the old house had been there for many years. When they were young, Oh Ming and Li Xiqing liked to sit on the grass by the side and chat. During the day, they sat fishing and basked in the sun. At night, they lay on their backs and looked at the sky full of stars. This kind of life lasted until they graduated from college. After graduation, Oh Ming went to Europe to study, and Li Xiqing started his own company. The days they spent together here became less and less. Once again lying in this place, the two of them felt infinite emotions in their hearts. Li Xiqing. Yes. Li Xiqing put his hands on his head, looked at the sky and responded. Today's Kingstown was already a first-tier city. The sky full of stars in the past no longer existed. The dark night sky now only had a little light hanging, looking bleak and lonely. For a long time, the two of them did not speak again. There was the sound of insects around, and the breeze was cool and comfortable. Li Xiqing looked at the night sky and slowly said, "This time in the capital, who did you meet?" Oh Ming was dazed and turned to look at Li Xiqing. After a long while, he chuckled. "Are you a roundworm?" Li Xiqing curled his lips and asked, "You Lily?" Oh Ming's eyes darkened at the mention of the name. He turned to look at the sky again. In the darkness, there seemed to be a smiling face, with a coquettish smile, looking at him provocatively. "It's her. She must be having a hard time." Oh Ming laughed. "How did you know?" "She can't live well without you. TSK, she's even more ruthless than me. At least I didn't want her to live a bad life." Oh Ming shook his head and removed his hand from under his head. His voice was distant and lonely. "Do you still remember the reason why we last met? The woman had a miscarriage." "Yes, for the past 4 years, I've always thought that it was my fault, that I crushed my own child to death." Oh Ming's voice was a little choked. In front of his only good brother, Oh Ming had no intention of hiding anything. He turned his head and said, "But, in fact, she took the medicine. She planned to have an abortion. It's twins." 2 children, Li Xiqing felt a sudden knock on his heart. Deep in his heart, he could not hold back his anger. Twins. They were actually 2 children. Chapter 7:15. 2 children. How much luck did one have to be in order for such luck to descend upon them? However, Yu Lily had killed such luck with her own hands. How cruel. She hates me. She blames me for not giving her freedom. If I had not been so domineering to her, would things have been different? Oh Ming's voice did not sound very emotional. A pair of dark brown pupils, looking at the sky in the distance, with endless loneliness and frustration. Li Xiqing, I really envy you. Although he had been away from home for 4 years, everything was developing in a good direction. He had twins who loved him, a wife who loved him, parents who loved him, and a loving grandfather who loved him. How lucky. Oh Ming curled his lips and looked at the sky in the distance. In front of him, there seemed to be a sarcastic smile. "No, that woman is an ungrateful wolf. The better you are to her, the more she wants to run away," Li Xiqing said lightly. She is not worthy of your attention. You are not young anymore. Doesn't your father urge you? Li Xiqing said indifferently. Ming chuckled and gave him a punch. Your grandfather just asked me. Why are you learning from your grandfather? If I meet the right person, I will get married. Maybe I can fall in love with her. Like you. Li Xiqing smiled and did not answer. How could it be the same? When he married Su Qianxi, there was no one in his heart. For him, it was the same no matter who he married. But Ming was different. He had been with that woman for 7 years. How could it be the same? But this was undoubtedly the best result. Did he want Ming to be single? If that woman was worth it, Li Xiqing had nothing to say. But you Lily, shoo, the sound of fireworks. Li Xiqing and Ming looked at the same time. The brilliant fireworks suddenly bloomed in the dark night sky, making the most beautiful smile. It was a riot of colors, forming a huge word. Li. Ming raised his eyebrows and read it out. Then, another firework rose. Shoo, bang, see. Then, the third, the fourth, the fifth. One by one, they bloomed. Cheng. Live. Day. Soon. Happy. Forever. Forever. Love. You. Li Xiqing, happy birthday. Love you forever. Forever. Ming muttered these 2 words in his heart and was slightly stunned. Seeing the fireworks, Li Xiqing already knew who it was. The corners of his lips curled up unconsciously. Following that, the sky was filled with fireworks once again. Each and every one of them was colorful and beautiful. His phone vibrated, and he picked it up. It was Su Qianxi. He picked it up, but it was not Su Qianxi's voice, but his baby daughter's. Li Jianyue's voice was sweet as she called out, Daddy, where are you? Do you see the fireworks? So beautiful. Yes, where's your mother? Li Jianyue smiled mysteriously. Mommy said that I can't tell Daddy. If Daddy is done with his work now, he can go to the swimming pool next to our house alone. With that, the little fellow hung up the phone. Li Xiqing sat up, reluctantly looking away from the fireworks in the distance, and looked sideways at Ming. Ming stood up, patted himself, and said, Your wife is waiting for you, right? Go ahead, I'll go back to the company first. See you tomorrow. Ming. You deserve better. Chapter 7:16. She deserved better. Ming chuckled and gently hammered him on the shoulder. Without saying anything, he smiled and waved his hand. Then he went into the old house, picked up his things, and left. After the black Lamborghini drove away, Li Xiqing turned and walked toward his swimming pool. He hadn't gone swimming for a long time, and he remembered that Su Qianxi didn't know how to swim. Why would he go there? Li Xiqing had already imagined a lot of pictures. For example, sex. This should be called a birthday gift, right? Curling his lips, Li Xiqing walked faster and faster. However, when he walked to the edge of the swimming pool, it was dark. It seemed that there was nothing. Standing there for a moment, Li Xiqing did not intend to move, but the smile on his lips was getting deeper and deeper. Suddenly, the lights in the surroundings lit up. Li Xiqing was dazzled by the sudden light, and his eyes curved. It was expected, but the effect of the surprise did not decrease. The bright yellow light shone under the swimming pool, turning the whole pool golden. There was a beautiful golden LED light shining at the bottom. Li Xiqing looked down and clearly saw his name. Li Xiqing, I love you. Right in the middle of the swimming pool, there was a bubble. Just above the bubble, there was a box. It was a big red square box, with ribbons on it, looking mysterious and beautiful. There was a long thin line tied to the ribbon. Li Xiqing looked along the thin line and found that the other end of the line was at his feet. Picking up the long line, Li Xiqing slowly pulled it, and the bubble was guided to this side by him. Taking the box up, Li Xiqing pulled the ribbon open, and there was a big piece of clay lying inside. On the clay, there were 3 small handprints and a slightly larger handprint. In front of the handprint were written Sen Yu Qian, and the word Ci was written on the big handprint. Under the clay, there was a small white whiteboard, with crooked colorful writing, Dad, Happy Birthday, Love Ursu. Li Xiqing saw this thing, and his eyes became softer. The softest part of his heart felt like it was hit by a stove, and he suddenly felt warm. His children, his wife. So nice. Hearing the sound of high heels behind him, Li Xiqing squinted, stood up, and turned around. Su Qianxi was wearing a bright red dress that was different from usual. It was a sleeveless backless dress, outlining her even and graceful figure. At the moment, she was smiling at him. Li Xiqing looked at her and also smiled happily. Su Qianxi stepped forward and put her arms around his neck. Smiling charmingly, she looked up at him with her big eyes and whispered, Mr. Li, Mrs. Li. Li Xiqing bowed his head, his forehead against hers, and said softly, You did all this? Su Qianxi heard that and chuckled. Mimicking him, she asked, What do you think? Li Xiqing's big hand held her eyes, his smile widening. Gazing down at her, his voice low and magnetic, he slowly said, I love you too. After saying that, he lowered his head and kissed her lips. Gently and tenderly, his hands tightened, holding her even more firmly. A light kiss and a light taste. Chapter 7:17. Hearing his words, Su Qianxi blushed. In front of her, Li Xiqing's eyes were dark, like a galaxy full of stars, breathtakingly beautiful. One look was enough to make her forget to leave. Gazing at him, Su Qianxi stood on her tiptoes and kissed his lips, imitating how he usually kissed her, gently and gently. He did not move, and Su Qianxi felt a little discouraged, but then she noticed his teasing eyes. Annoyed, she put her toes down, but her waist was suddenly tightened. His eyes were full of smiles, and his voice was low and soft. Go on. Su Qianxi was reluctant, pouted and looked away. Today is my birthday, Mrs. Li. With a smile in his eyes, Li Xiqing lowered his head and gently kissed her cheek. Go on. Su Qianxi blushed and whispered, Let's go back to the room. Li Xiqing's smile on her cheek widened. He carried her in his arms and walked in the direction of the house. Put me down first. It's not good to be seen by the children. There is nothing wrong with it. Is it not normal for Dad to carry Mom? Li Xiqing whispered in her ear, The children all know that their dad wants to carry their mom, and their thoughts are still very pure. Did he mean that Su Qianxi's thoughts were not pure? Su Qianxi blushed even more, gave him a stare, and was about to get down. However, Li Xiqing held her more firmly and whispered, Don't move. I can't help it. Su Qianxi was speechless. Blushing, she lowered her head and whispered, Pervert. Li Xiqing's voice was low and gentle, with an indescribable magnetism. Holding her, he walked faster and whispered in her ear, I have always been like this. You like it too, don't you? At this time, it was only 9 p.m. The children and Grandpa had already been sent to bed, leaving only Qin Shuhua and Li Xiao in the living room. The old couple was watching TV. Seeing Li Xiqing coming in with Su Qianxi in his arms, Qin Shuhua immediately looked at Li Xiao and smiled. Su Qianxi's face was even redder. Covering her face, she buried her head in his chest and patted him gently, urging, Hurry up. Li Xiqing's lips curled up as he walked toward the room. She reached out and opened the door. After he walked in, she closed the door. But before she could lock the door, he carried her into the house. As soon as he entered the room, he saw the bed covered in red roses. Li Xiqing chuckled and gently put her down. He whispered, "I didn't expect you to be so romantic." Su Qianxi blushed and looked at him. She hugged his neck and whispered, "In the Maldives, when we first went there, did you put those roses?" That was 5 years ago, when Grandpa forced her to go to the Maldives with Li Xiqing for a vacation. When they just moved in, she saw a bed full of roses. Densely packed, it was very beautiful and fresh. Such flowers were already very expensive. The hotel should not have spent a lot of money on that kind of thing. Su Qianxi only realized this in the past few days. Chapter 7:18. The fiery big palm moved gently from her waist to her back, gently stroking her smooth and delicate back. It was as soft as a peeled egg, smooth and delicate. Li Xiqing couldn't help but touch it a few more times, feeling even more unable to control himself. After a long time, Li Xiqing let go of her, breathing a little fast, and said, "It's me." At that time, Qing Yu was reading a comic in the company during her break, and the hero was quarreling with the heroine. After the heroine got off work, she returned home and found the bed full of beautiful rose petals, which was very surprising. The hero came out from under the bed and lifted the quilt. The rose petals were scattered all over the sky, which was very beautiful. Li Xiqing had already prepared for her. At that time, seeing her stunned expression, he was also in a good mood. Hearing Li Xiqing's affirmative answer, Su Qianxi's eyes were even more gentle, and she looked up to kiss him. The smile on Li Xiqing's lips widened, and he pushed her to the center of the bed. Dense kisses accompanied by the color of lipstick moved to Su Qianxi's chin, neck, collarbone. Su Qianxi hugged him tighter, and her body couldn't help trembling under the movement of his big hands. No matter how many times she had been with him, her body was always as sensitive as when she first met him. The feeling of numbness spread from the tailbone to the whole body, and Su Qianxi's whole body softened. Li Xiqing gently pulled her shoulder strap and kissed her affectionately and enchantingly, carefully as if he was protecting a precious work of art. "Dad, Dad." Suddenly a child's voice came from outside. Li Xiqing's body stiffened, and before he had time to react, the door of the room had been opened. Su Qianxi was also shocked and quickly pushed him. Her already pink face suddenly became even more flushed. She covered her chest and pulled up her clothes. Li Jianyue ran in, crying, "Dad, my brother won't let me play with the building blocks." Sob. Li Xiqing was a little embarrassed and sat up. Su Qianxi turned around, blushing, and quickly put on her clothes. As for Li Xiqing, he had just kissed Su Qianxi and had not had time to wipe off the lipstick on his mouth. Li Jianyue saw the lipstick mark on his lips, chin, and cheeks. She widened her eyes, looked at Li Xiqing, and said in surprise, "Dad, are you wearing lipstick?" Li Xiqing felt the blue veins in his temples throbbing. Looking at the mirror on the dresser, he took 2 tissues and wiped the lipstick on his face before turning to look at his baby daughter. At this moment, Li Jianyue's big eyes were wet, and she looked a little wronged. Her 2 eyebrows were arched and her little face had turned pink. She was wearing a cute princess nightgown and was hugging the Barbie doll that Rong Xian had bought for her previously. She looked at him with an aggrieved expression. "Daddy," Li Xiqing felt a little helpless. He went forward to pick up his daughter and asked softly, "What happened to Ursu?" "Big brother doesn't let me play with building blocks." "Boo-hoo. Big brother is too selfish. I don't like Big brother anymore." Li Jianyue hugged Li Xiqing's neck and cried. She looked so aggrieved that Li Xiqing's heart ached. Li Xiqing wiped her tears and unconsciously frowned. He coaxed, "Versu, be good. Daddy will teach Big Brother a lesson for you." "Where is Big Brother? Take me there." Chapter 719. Li Xiqing smiled, held the little guy, and walked in the direction of the children's room. Su Qianxi tidied up her clothes and then saw the little guy's appearance. She couldn't help but laugh. Watching the father and son leave, her face became hotter. The surprise she had prepared for him was still coming. She almost thought that she couldn't take it out, but it was interrupted by the little guy. Was this a blessing in disguise? Su Qianxi's face became redder and redder. When Li Xiqing carried Li Jianyue to the children's room, he saw a big tall building block tower as soon as he entered. These blocks were all solid wood blocks he bought for Li Jianqian. Many adults also liked to play this game. As soon as Li Xiqing walked in, he was a little surprised. The blocks inside were piled high, and they were actually as high as Li Jianqian's height. The inside was hollow, and there were hollowed gaps on the outside. The whole was a circular tower. Even so, the bottom 3 or 4 layers were very tight and airtight. When it got higher and higher, the distance between the blocks slowly opened up. Each block was only about 2.5 centimeters wide, and it was placed horizontally. There were at least hundreds of them stacked on top of each other. Both Li Jianqian and Li Mosin looked a little excited. They put the last block on the top, and the whole tower shook slightly. But it was only a slight shake, and in a moment, it returned to normal. It looked very tall, but it was very stable. It was placed on the edge of the small bed, just beside Li Jianyue's bed. Wow! Li Jianyue seemed to have forgotten why she called her father over. She looked at the tall tower with her eyes wide open, and her little face was full of worship. Amazing! It's so high. As she spoke, she struggled to get down. Li Xiqing put the little guy down, but Li Jianqian and Li Mosin immediately felt a sense of crisis and shouted at the same time, "Don't come over." Li Jianyue was frightened by them and looked at them with a blank face. Li Jianqian and Li Mosin were carefully guarding the building block tower, for fear that Li Jianyue would come up and destroy it. "Dad!" Li Jianyue pouted and looked at Li Xiqing behind her, pretending to cry again. Li Xiqing held Li Jianyue in his arms and sat on the small bed at the side. He asked, "Did you two do this?" "N." Li Mosin looked at Li Xiqing with stars in his eyes and said, "It was all done by Desu and me. Isn't it amazing?" Li Jianqian was also looking forward to it. With a blush on his face, he looked at Li Xiqing, waiting for his comment. "Not bad, but the next time you play, remember to teach your sister how to play. At this time, you should all be asleep. All of you, go to bed." When Li Mosin and Li Jianqian heard that, they immediately climbed onto the bed and covered their heads with the blankets. When Li Jianyue saw this, her big eyes stared straight at the toy tower. She wanted to go forward and touch it. Li Jianqian noticed his sister's gaze and warned, "Don't move, or you'll fall." "Humph! Cheapskate!" Li Jianyue got down from Li Xiqing's body and climbed onto her little bed. Looking at the building blocks, her eyes lit up. Li Xiqing chuckled and said with a straight face, "Remember to take your sister to play next time. You can't play by yourself. Do you hear me?" "Oh." Li Jianqian responded and covered his head with the quilt. Li Xiqing stood up, closed the door and went out. But before the door was closed, he heard a crashing sound coming from inside. Hearing this sound, Li Xiqing immediately felt more helpless. Chapter 720. Sure enough, there was a loud cry from inside. Li Xiqing opened the door again, walked in, and turned on the light. At a glance, he saw the two boys, Li Mosen and Li Jianqian, who were about to cry, looking at the small tower in front of them that had collapsed more than half. The small tower, which was originally as tall as them, had already collapsed by more than half, leaving only the bottom layer still standing firmly. "Ah! Li Ersu, you compensate me!" Li Jianqian shouted and almost cried. His eyes were red with anger, and he roared, "You get it back for me. I worked with Mosen all night to finish it." Li Mosen was also a little unhappy, but his mood was obviously calmer. After all, he was just an assistant, and the main force was all Li Jianqian. And the culprit, Li Jianyue, was holding the small quilt with an innocent face. She was stunned by Li Jianqian's roar. When she noticed that her father had come in, she turned her little head to look at Li Xiqing, and she was a little scared. Her little face was a little wronged, and she weakly said, "Dad, you did it." Li Xiqing's forehead was twisted. Seeing the mess on the ground, he felt a little sorry. The little guy spent a night to finish it, and it must have taken a lot of effort. It was normal for him to be angry when it was knocked down. Li Jianyue bowed her head weakly and whispered, "I just wanted to touch it, but my brother didn't let me play." As she said that, her little face became more and more wrinkled and red, and she cried out of guilt and grievance. Her big eyes narrowed together, and tears rolled down all at once. "Whoa! I didn't mean it." Looking at Li Jianqian, he found that the little guy's anger seemed to have subsided a little, but he still looked very unhappy. Li Xiqing had a headache. He held Ersu over, gently wiped her tears, and whispered, "Want to play with your brothers?" Ersu sniffed, and her crying stopped a little. She nodded and said, "Yes. Go apologize to your brother." Li Jianyue heard that, climbed down from Li Xiqing, walked to Li Jianqian's side, and said in a choked voice, "Brother, I'm sorry." Li Jianqian's anger had subsided a lot. When he heard what she said, his face was still stiff. He looked at her and said with some disgust, "Don't cry. You're so ugly." When Li Jianyue heard that, she pouted and pretended to cry again. Li Jianqian's little face became even more disgusted, and he shouted, "If you cry again, I won't play with you anymore." These words scared Li Jianyue so much that she quickly stopped crying. She didn't dare to cry anymore. Li Jianqian was more sensible and smart than many children of his age. He was so thoughtful at such a young age. It seemed that it was good to be raised by his grandfather. Li Mosen and Li Jianqian spent more time with their grandfather, while Li Jianyue often played with Qin Shuhua. The little girl was like a little princess. Although she was smart and sensible, compared to the two boys, she was more delicate. The little guy wanted to play with his brothers. Maybe it would be better, Li Xiqing thought for a moment, clapped his hands at them, and said, "Tomorrow, Dad will make a beautiful one for you. Now, pick up the blocks on the ground first, and we will continue to build them tomorrow." Chapter 721. Li Jianqian did not speak and got out of bed to help. Li Jianrui followed behind and squatted down to help pick it up. She said to Li Mosen, "Brother Mosen, I'm sorry. It's Ersu's fault. I knocked it down." The expression on Li Mosen's face was much better. He smiled at Li Jianrui and reached out to wipe her face. "It doesn't matter. Let's play together tomorrow," he said and turned his head to look at Li Jianqian. "Okay, Dasu." Li Jianqian picked up the building blocks and said coolly without looking up, "Then she has to be obedient. She has to promise not to destroy or cry before she can play with us." Li Jianrui heard this and nodded. "I won't cry. I'll be obedient. Brother is the best." Li Jianqian snorted softly, but his lips were slightly raised. It was very shallow, but it could not hide from Li Xiqing's vicious eyes. Li Xiqing couldn't help but smile. He was a little helpless with this son. When he was a child, he was not so arrogant, was he? TSK, he must have inherited it from his mother. Watching the children pack up the building blocks, Li Xiqing put the box in the corner of the room, then turned off the light and walked out. Finally, he could go back. Hey, it's really not easy to raise a child. It's even more difficult to want to raise a child and have a world of two. Li Xiqing's feeling when he was just hit was completely gone. At this moment, there was only a deep sense of helplessness. Opening the door, the room was dark, and the lights were not turned on. After locking the door and making sure that the children could not open the door by themselves, he reached out to turn on the light. At the same time, a shadow appeared in front of him. It looked like he was creeping closer, and he seemed to be wearing very little. Li Xiqing took his hand back and looked at her with his lips slightly raised. Su Qianxi walked over quietly. When she was about to touch him, the man in front of her suddenly rushed toward her. Su Qianxi exclaimed and then heard his low voice, "What are you playing at?" As he said that, his big hand touched her body, which was only wearing a chiffon. Wherever he went, Su Qianxi couldn't help but tremble slightly. She whispered, "Can you see clearly at night?" "I can't see it clearly, but I can see and touch it." Li Xiqing pressed her against the wall and squeezed his thigh between her legs. Holding her, his big hand stroked under her waist. There was only a small piece of fabric between them. Li Xiqing's eyes in the dark night seemed to be refracted by the light, which was particularly eye-catching in the dark night. He chuckled softly, and his voice was soft and gentle as he said slowly, "I like it very much." Su Qianxi's face was burning, but it was so dark that she was sure he could not see her expression. Reaching out, she grabbed his large hand and placed it on her chest. She whispered, "I heard that men like to play with excitement." Li Xiqing chuckled, leaned against her neck, and gently rubbed it. Feeling her sensitive shiver, he felt indescribably satisfied. He said softly, "This is not exciting. How about something new?" Su Qianxi blushed even more. She opened her big round eyes in the dark and asked weakly, "What's new?" Chapter 722. Su Qianxi blushed and was hugged by him to take a shower. However, he soon became naughty. He grabbed her hand and felt it all over his body, up and down. Su Qianxi closed her eyes and tried not to look at him. However, her hand was grabbed. She turned to look at him in disbelief, but he lowered his head and kissed her. Gently moving down, his lips against her skin, he whispered, "Mrs. Li, it's my turn. Be good. Today is my birthday." Su Qianxi blushed. "No, last time when we were watching the stars, you said no too. Didn't it work out in the end?" Su Qianxi blushed and tried to push him away, but she could not move at all. Being guided, she slowly squatted down. Ancient cities had always been tourist attractions. Whether it was Phoenix in Hunan, Shangqiu in Hunan, or Pingyao in Shaanxi, the most famous one in China should be Lijiang in Yunnan. At the same time, there were also many hotels and inns in Lijiang. All kinds of very ethnic pendants and streets were across Lijiang. On the day of September 30th, the inns located not far from Lijiang's Bar Street were all full. However, there was an inn called Elegant Solitude with only a few customers. A young man and a woman wearing glasses and hats walked in. The man was carrying a large backpack on his back, and the woman was carrying a large suitcase. When the wheels of the suitcase rolled, the sound was very loud. Soon, it woke up the lazy boss who was lying on the counter. The young man looked very tall and strong. He was wearing a platinum chain around his neck. It was hard to see what the pattern was, but it looked like a fat sheep that was easy to be slaughtered. The boss glanced at them and asked lazily, "Do you want to stay?" Yes, but our wallets are in my wife's bag. It was stolen when we came. Can we stay without ID? The man's voice was a bit hoarse, and it seemed that his throat was not very good. The boss glanced at them lazily and said, "Why are you wearing glasses and hats? Are you celebrities afraid of being seen?" As he said that, he sneered and said, "You can stay here, but you'll have to pay more. Normally, people here charge $380 per night, but you'll have to pay $500. You'll have to pay a night's deposit, and I'll return it to you when you check out. 3 meals will be included. You can eat at the cafeteria or have it delivered to you. How long are you staying? 500 yuan for a shop like this. Are you trying to cheat me?" The woman's temper was obviously a bit bad as she shouted. "You don't have to stay here if you think it's expensive, but you can't stay in other hotels without ID cards. What if you're illegal immigrants or wanted criminals? We also have to bear the risk." Speaking of this, the woman's face changed slightly. Just as she was about to say something, the young man gently pushed her away and said, "We'll stay here for a week. We'll leave after the National Day. How much will we pay you? We don't have much money left. Please give us a discount." "All right, 8 days, a total of 4,000. Give me 3,500 and that's it. Give me 4,000 now and I'll give you 500 later." After paying the money and taking the key, the young man and woman carried their luggage to the guest room on the 3rd floor. Chapter 723. Bo Xiao glanced at his wallet, and his face was not very good. He said, "More than 3,000, it should be enough for a while." "Hey! We've been cheated a lot. What should we do next? Do we really have to stay here for a week?" Rong Anna looked angry. "I'm so angry. 100 is enough for such a shop. This person is clearly cheating us. I'm so angry. Go take a shower first. Later, we'll go to the bar. When this deal is successful, we'll have money, and then we'll go to Myanmar." "How?" "Sneak. Shoo, go take a shower." Bo Xiao gently pushed her. "Check if there are any surveillance cameras. Be careful." But Rong Anna did not leave. The more she thought about it, the sadder she felt. She looked up at him with unspeakable grievances. "Xiao, let's turn ourselves in. I don't want to live like this anymore. If we turn ourselves in now, we may be sentenced to a few years less. Anna, do you want us to walk into the trap?" Bo Xiao was obviously a little shocked. Looking at Rong Anna in front of him, he was a little emotional and said, "Do you think we can come back if we hit the muzzle in this situation? How many people have we killed? The list has been found. If we go back at this time, what awaits us can only be the death penalty." His voice was a little loud, and Rong Anna was frightened. She covered his mouth and listened carefully outside. Sure enough, there was a very loud voice. She immediately shouted, "Oh, this scene is too difficult. If I can't recite the lines, will the director scold me?" The people passing by immediately stopped their hands that were about to call the police. They breathed a sigh of relief and muttered to themselves, "It turns out to be an actor. I was scared to death." Inside, Bo Xiao's face darkened and he looked at the door. The soundproofing effect of this small inn was not very good. The environment was comfortable and clean, but the overall style was elegant and beautiful. In fact, there was no equipment worth the price. The reason why they chose this place was precisely because it was dark here. If something really happened, the owner probably would not dare to call the police. Hearing the footsteps outside go away, Bo Xiao and Rong Anna relaxed. Rong Anna looked at Bo Xiao, and there was some pleading in her eyes. "Anyway, don't get excited. Don't beat the grass and scare the snake. Settle down first, find a partner, hand over the goods, get the money, and we'll go. Bo Xiao was a little reluctant. He shook his head and said with an obvious anger on his face, yes, after finishing this task, we will go out and lie low for a while. But we will come back sooner or later. Li Xiqing colluded with Tang Menjing to frame us. The Bo group has been destroyed, and my father is in prison. Now we can't even go home. It's all their fault. Seeing the ruthlessness in Bo Xiao's eyes, Rongana's eyes were full of pity. She whispered, Xiao, in fact, it is not their fault. We pushed Li Xiqing too hard. If we did not want to kill Su Qinzi again and again, maybe he would not be so cruel to us. If we were friends with him at the beginning, and then pulled him into our camp, maybe, what's the use of saying this now? Bo Xiao's face was cold. I have already dealt with Tang Menjing. I asked someone to draw an X on her face. She was burned by fire 4 years ago, and she uses makeup to cover the scar every day. Now she can't even put on makeup. Next, it's Li Xiqing. Chapter 724. Bo Xiao's face and voice were full of hatred. Rong Anna looked at him and subconsciously put her hand on her abdomen, feeling more and more sad. Why on earth did they have to be reduced to such a state? Really, so tired, Su Qinzi was tormented by someone with the excuse of her annual birthday. She did not fall asleep until late at night. When she was sleeping soundly, she felt restless hands wandering around her body. Frowning, she reached out and slapped it, saying coquettishly, stop it. However, Li Xiqing did not stop at all. He lifted her legs and lowered his body. Su Qinzi pouted in a daze. When she opened her eyes, she was already attacked by him. Unprepared, Su Qinzi let out a soft moan from her throat. The king-sized bed swayed gently with his penetration, like a surging wave. Under his repeated force, Su Qinzi once again felt refreshed. When she woke up again, it was already afternoon. Su Qinzi was still in a daze. Seeing that it was already past 1 p.m., she was startled and woke up. Li Xiqing was sleeping next to her. Noticing her big reaction, he reached out and pressed her down, saying, aren't you tired? Sleep a little longer. It's already afternoon, and you're still sleeping. If people know, we will be laughed at. Su Qinzi wiped her face and lifted the quilt to get out. However, seeing the marks on her body, she even wanted to kill Li Xiqing. Seeing her expression, Li Xiqing chuckled and said, what's so funny? It's said that absence makes the heart grow fonder. I haven't been home for more than 4 years, and I've only been back for more than half a month. Can't we have some love? Love, Su Qinzi blushed and kicked him. It's all because of you. You're so energetic. Why don't we all stay in the room today? Get out. Okay. Li Xiqing's dark eyes were deeper. With a smile, he turned her over and whispered, continue to get out. Su Qinzi's face was even redder. Staring at him, she complained, how can you be so energetic? Did you sleep? Yes, I woke up when you woke up. Li Xiqing held her, unwilling to let go. Gazing at her deeply, he whispered, why don't we move back to the villa we used to live in? It's too inconvenient to live in the old house. The biggest inconvenience was that he couldn't use the balcony, kitchen, living room, and sofa. Thinking about it, his eyes became darker, and he kissed her lips. Wait a minute, let's tell Grandpa, and then we'll pack up and move back. But what about the children? We have 3 children, and we all have to work. What about the children? Do you want the children to stay in the villa? Stay in the old house and let Grandpa teach you. Then we won't go back to the old house. I come back occasionally. It's only half an hour drive anyway. It's not far. He simply lay on top of her and said in a low voice, "We also want our time together. It's not appropriate to always live with the elders." That being said, she still felt that she couldn't let it go. There were too many children. If there was only one, she could bring it along with her in the villa and raise it herself. Chapter 725. But, I don't think it's a good idea. I have lived here for so long, and you move out as soon as you come back. Isn't it obvious? Wasn't it obvious that they wanted to live a married life? Although this was the truth, Su Qianxi still felt a bit ashamed when she thought about it. It was too obvious, Li Xiqing chuckled. Then, like today, we are still in the room at noon. Do you think it is more appropriate? Su Qianxi blushed even more and looked away from him. It's decided. Li Xiqing got up and pulled her up. Get up, I will give you a bath. No, I will wash myself. Su Qianxi blushed even more and pushed him away. Li Xiqing ignored her protest and directly pulled her into the bathroom. When they came out, it was already past 2 p.m. As soon as they went out, they heard the phone was ringing. It was Li Jinnan. Li Xiqing glanced at it and ignored it. After slowly finding clothes for Su Qianxi, he picked up the phone. Li Jinnan was already furious. His tone was not very good. He complained, "Second brother, you are too much. You are pushing all the blame on me. I also need to have a private life, okay?" Li Xiqing turned on the speaker and found clothes for himself. Hearing Li Jinnan's words, he lazily responded and said, "Anyway, you have nothing to do. What's wrong with helping me manage the company? It's not like you don't get paid. I will give you 10% of the shares." No. Li Jinnan was angry. Why do I need money? I want to do it myself. Li Xiqing felt a bit helpless. Okay, you manage it for me first. When I am in a good mood, I will help you. I mean, I want to open my own company. Li Jinnan's voice became serious. Brother, I want to open a film and television entertainment company in Kingstown. I have already started preparing. I have poached several agents and stars. I have to hand it over to you. I will leave it alone in the future. So suddenly. Li Xiqing was a little surprised. Li Jinnan felt even more crazy and said patiently, "It's not sudden. Before you came back, I told my sister-in-law. After you came back, I told you. I told you again a few days ago." However, Li Xiqing did not pay any attention to him. Li Xiqing suddenly understood. "Oh, in that case, I'll take your sister-in-law to dinner first. We'll talk about it later." Before Li Jinnan could say anything, the call was hung up. Holding the phone in silence for a long time, Li Jinnan almost smashed it. Li Xiqing was a liar. The office doorbell rang. Li Jinnan calmed down and said, "Please come in." Special Assistant Bai came in from the outside, followed by a person. He said to Li Jinnan, "Vice President, Mira is here." Mira was one of the managers that Li Jinnan had poached with a large sum of money. It was said that every artist that he signed could be made famous. He was known as one of the top managers in the industry. However, Mira had a weird personality. Many people weren't willing to work with him. That was how Li Jinnan had managed to take advantage of the situation. "Come in." Li Jinnan stood up and tidied himself up before looking at the door. Special Assistant Bai was followed by a man who was gorgeously dressed. Chapter 726. When Mira saw Li Jinnan, his eyes lit up and he said in surprise, "Aren't you the handsome guy I met at the Dongfang Hotel last time?" Oh my god, you are the boss of NC Entertainment. You are so young. His voice was sharp and it sounded like he was surprised. Li Jinan had already felt that the man looked a little familiar. When he heard the man speak, he immediately remembered where he had come from. Last time in the hotel, he was hugged by a woman and called another man's name. This person seemed to be the woman's friend. A coquettish, gay. Li Jinan was speechless. He looked at Mira and nodded. Hello, I am Li Jinan. I am Li Jinan, not Li Jinan. This was the most positive and confident self-introduction. Hearing this deep, magnetic voice, Mira felt even more excited. He was so surprised that he was bursting with joy. He said, Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. I'm Mira, one of the top agents of Starshine. Oh my, you look so young. You're 29 years old, right? Oh my god, I thought I was looking at a 24 or 25-year-old fresh meat. Li Jinan had a faint polite smile on his face. It was not deep, but it was enough to make Mira more dazzled. If you come to the entertainment circle, you will definitely attract a lot of boys and girls. In the most popular saying, you can obviously rely on your face to make a living, but you choose to rely on your talent. Mira did not hide his compliment and handed out his business card. This is my business card. It's the first time we meet. Please take care of me in the future. Li Jinan felt that he could not continue the conversation. After a few greetings, he excused himself and let Mira go. Today was September 30th. It was going to be the National Day holiday. Li Jinan felt tired both mentally and physically. He took a long sigh of relief and called a meeting with the company's top executives. He was busy until the evening before he returned to his villa. The villa was empty, and only Nanny Rong was at home. Nanny Rong put the prepared food on the table. When she saw him coming back, she shouted, Third Master, you are back. The food is hot. Eat first. Li Jinan looked at Nanny Rong and said softly, Didn't I tell you to go home early? Why did you come over to help me cook? Go home early. It's getting late. That won't do. Your mother told me to take good care of you. I'm just cooking a meal. Come eat it while it's hot. Thank you, Nanny Rong. Li Jinan didn't decline. After dinner, Nanny Rong washed the dishes and hung them out to dry before heading home. After Li Jinan took a shower and changed his clothes, he faced the empty villa. His mind subconsciously thought back to the time when he was still in the old mansion. The two babies often cried. Su Qianxi and her mother held one each and comforted them anxiously. Li Jinan watched her gradually wither from a delicate flower in the palm of Li Xiqing, but there was nothing he could do. Perhaps he was trying to escape, or perhaps he couldn't bear it. Li Jinan moved out of the old house. He was afraid that he couldn't help but love the poor little widow on behalf of his dead brother. Fortunately, he came back. This was the best outcome, wasn't it? Ding dong. His phone rang, and a WeChat message popped up, Mira. Chapter 727. Yi. The college girl who was drunk and called him Brother Luo and in the bathroom last time. In the photo, it was a girl with long hair who looked pure and lovely. Her eyes were open as if they could speak. It turned out that she was an actress. Mira, good actress, good singing, pure and sharp. Graduated from art school, 22 years old, 168 centimeters tall. Li Jinan replied, You decide. Mira, okay, October 1st. On the first day of the National Day holiday, Su Qianxi had promised the children to take them to the Maldives, so she had to get up early in the morning to prepare. Lu Sa had packed the luggage, booked the tickets, and booked the hotel. The flight was at 10 a.m. However, things did not go as she wished. Last night, because of what happened the day before yesterday, Su Qianxi strictly stopped him from doing anything bad. Li Xiqing agreed, but the aftermath was that he pestered her early in the morning and would not let her go. When she woke up and was about to freshen up, he took her in his arms, kissing and hugging her. He was rubbing all over her body, trying to arouse her. However, Su Qianxi was a very principled person. She pushed him away and warned, "Go away. I have to prepare for the trip to the Maldives later. Let's go later." Li Xiqing hugged her and looked at her pleadingly. His dark and deep eyes flashed with an indecipherable look. "Honey, I want to." When Su Qianxi was about to speak, her lips were covered by his. Struggling, she turned her head and yelled, "Go away." At the same time, she stretched out her leg and kicked. Unfortunately, her knee hit the man's weakest and most important part. Li Xiqing only felt a piercing pain, clutching his crotch and gasping in pain. Su Qianxi was shocked and exclaimed, "Honey, are you okay? It hurts." Li Xiqing grabbed her hand and sounded very painful. Su Qianxi panicked and yelled, "What should I do? It's okay. Just rub it for me. Come on, rub it." Hearing this, Su Qianxi's original nervousness and fear were all gone. Staring at him, she punched his stomach, snorted, and turned away. After successfully getting rid of him, she coaxed the children to the living room and prepared to go straight to the airport. However, Li Xiqing was not happy. His face was sullen early in the morning, as if he was afraid that no one would know he was not satisfied. Su Qianxi saw his face and felt guilty. She pushed him and urged, "Let's go." Li Xiqing looked pale and did not move. Suddenly, the phone rang. He glanced at it and then ignored her, going to the side to answer it. She wanted to follow him, but when he saw her coming, he immediately moved away, as if he was afraid that she would hear him talking on the phone. When he was talking on the phone, he kept looking at Su Qianxi, fearing that she would hear him. Su Qianxi felt a little suspicious. Watching him hang up the phone, she asked when he walked over, "What's wrong?" Li Xiqing's expression was not very good. Hearing her words, he said sullenly, "There is something urgent overseas. I have to go on a business trip. You can take the children with you. I won't be going." Chapter 728. Li Xiqing heard that and looked sullen. He squinted at her and said, "It's about hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course, it's important. Anyway, you have children and don't want me anymore. I'll just go on a business trip." "No, Mom, let's go. I want to go to the horse's ears." Li Jianyue called Su Qianxi from a distance. After Su Qianxi responded, she pulled Li Xiqing. "Let's go. The children are waiting for us. This is the first time you have a holiday with the children. Don't let them wait for you." Li Xiqing pushed her hand away. "You guys go. I won't go. I have to go on a business trip." "You are not happy." Su Qianxi looked at him. She heard that when men were not satisfied, their temper was not very good. This guy was also like that. Su Qianxi frowned and said with a blush, "Wait until we get to the Maldives." "No, I'm busy at the company. Help me talk to the children." Li Xiqing gently pushed her, and then the phone rang again. Su Qianxi glanced at it and saw it was a strange number. It looked a bit strange at first, but before she could see more, it was blocked by Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing reached out and pushed Su Qianxi away, saying, "It's just because I'm busy with work. Don't think too much. Go have fun with the children. Pay attention to safety." Tell Shuangyu Cheng and to be careful. Su Qianxi felt a little uncomfortable and a bit nervous at the same time. Li Xiqing had never been like this. Generally speaking, no matter how busy his work was, he would refuse it. It was the first time that he insisted on going on a business trip like today. Are you really angry? Su Qianxi took his hand and said coquettishly, let's wait until we get to the hotel. There's no time now. Let's not mess around, okay? No. Li Xiqing looked indifferent and pulled her hand away. Go ahead. I still have to go to the company to get some documents. I will go on a business trip later. You can leave my luggage here. Bye. Then, he really turned around and walked away. Su Qianxi's heart seemed to be blocked, not very comfortable. Li Xiqing was angry. He was not like this before. Why? Was it just because she had just rejected him? Was that why he treated her so coldly on purpose? Seeing that he really left without looking back, Su Qianxi felt a bit annoyed. Forget it, if you're angry, then be angry. I'm the one who should be angry. Why didn't he give her a break? So what if he threw a tantrum? Once he calmed down, she wouldn't let him sleep with her. Let's see who was more ruthless. Seeing his back gradually disappearing at the end of the hallway, she stomped her foot and cursed in a low voice, childish. He turned around and angrily ordered the bodyguards to carry the luggage to the nanny van. Louis Han fell asleep at 4 in the morning and slept until noon the next day. But before he could have his fill of sleep, he was woken up by the sound of banging outside. Louis Han got up impatiently and walked toward the source of the sound. He was surprised to find that it was the kitchen. Luo Zhan was wearing an apron and holding a kitchen knife in his hand. He couldn't bear to look at it and stood aside, watching the big crabs in the pool struggling to escape. Louis Han chuckled and asked, "What are you doing?" Luo Zhan heard his voice and looked a bit embarrassed. His voice was a bit weak. "I'm cooking." Chapter 729. Luo Zhan said. "No, I'm learning." Louis Han could not bear to look at him and went to look at his ingredients. Fried crab in the shelter. Luo Zhan was shocked. "How did you know?" Louis Han squinted at him and snorted. "I am the god of cookery. But you did not choose the right ingredients. Look at this onion, it is not fresh at all. This is my first time buying vegetables. What else do you want?" Gee, a person who does not even know how to buy vegetables wants to cook. Louis Han looked at the ingredients. Eggplant with garlic sauce. Fish head tofu soup. Bamboo shoots and bacon. How do you want to make chicken wings? Cola. Oh, Louis Han washed his hands. Leave it. I'll do it. Luo Zhan stared blankly at him as he walked away. Looking at his back, he asked, "Hey, where are you going?" "Brush my teeth and wash my face." "Oh." Louis Han changed his clothes, brushed his teeth, and washed his face before coming to the kitchen. The big crab that was still alive had been killed by Luo Zhan. Its claws were cut off, but its mouth was still spitting bubbles. It was not dead yet. Louis Han was silent for a moment and could not bear to look at it. He took the kitchen knife from him and said, "Help me. Wash the fish head first. Don't get the red parts. Remember to clean the gills and blood clots, and then go to the water." "Okay." Luo Zhan obeyed. Louis Han carefully went to cook the crab. When he finally finished, he found that Luo Zhan had already cooked it. A strong fragrance floated out. Louis Han turned his head and found that Luo Zhan was looking at him proudly. He put the crab down and walked over. He swallowed the compliment that was on the tip of his tongue. The largest pot in the kitchen could hold 2 kilograms of water. At the moment, the pot was full of fish soup and 2 pieces of tofu. How is it? Is it very good? Luo Zhan raised his eyebrows at him. Lu Han was speechless. He slapped him and said fiercely, "Get out. Don't come into my kitchen." Luo Zhan looked confused and did not know what was going on. Watching Lu Han lift the pot and pour out nearly 4/5 of the water, she suddenly realized. Too much water. Lu Han glanced at him in disgust. "Idiot, don't tell anyone that you know me." Luo Zhan silently retreated to the side and had to do something else to pass the time. About 40 minutes later, Lu Han was done cooking. When it was done, Lu Han suddenly came back to his senses and said, "Oh no, I haven't cooked yet." Luo Zhan's eyes lit up when he heard that, and he said with some complacency, "I've already cooked." As he spoke, he went to open the rice pot, but... should I go downstairs and buy some rice? As soon as Lu Han saw his cowardly look, he knew something was wrong. He went forward to take a look and realized that it wasn't rice at all. It was simply porridge without any soup. It was so rotten that one could not look straight at it. Lu Han was completely defeated by him. With a dark face, he said, "Without me, you won't be able to survive." This sentence inexplicably caused Luo Zhan's heartbeat to suddenly accelerate. This sentence. What? What did he mean? Lu Han did not notice Luo Zhan's strangeness behind him. He picked up the rotten rice and said helplessly, "With some improvement, it can still be eaten as porridge. Go boil some water." When Luo Zhan heard this, his face burned even more. He tried to be casual and responded, "Oh." Chapter 730. Luo Zhan sneered. "You are useless. I am just not good at it. Let's compete in something else. Like cleaning. Or dressing up. Chasing girls." Lu Han took out the rice from the pot and raised his eyebrows. "It seems that there is nothing you are good at." Luo Zhan was silent for a moment and said, "I can play basketball, badminton, tennis, volleyball, running, I can do all of them. How about swimming, weightlifting, push-ups, and sit-ups?" Luo Zhan was speechless. Kill. Luo Zhan decided to ignore him. After washing his hands, he went to set the table. When Lu Han finally made the porridge, many of the fried crabs on the table had been eaten by Luo Zhan. Lu Han came up with a helpless face and reached out to grab the crab pincer that Luo Zhan had just picked up. After the meal, Luo Zhan consciously went to wash the dishes. After cleaning up everything, he came out again and found that Lu Han had fallen asleep. At this moment, Lu Han was half leaning on the bed, one foot on the sofa, one hand on the armrest, the other on the back of the chair, his head leaning against the corner of the sofa, eyes closed, breathing evenly. Luo Zhan looked at his face and unconsciously slowed down. Walking forward slowly, Luo Zhan looked at Lu Han's face and subconsciously held his breath. Lu Han was really good-looking. Lu Han's lines were strong and sunny. Whether in terms of ability or appearance, Lu Han was absolutely outstanding. But he fell in love with someone he shouldn't have. Luo Zhan had some sympathy in his heart. He took the blanket next to the sofa and covered him. His body slightly leaned down, and inadvertently, Lu Han's breath blew on his face. It was ticklish and a little provocative. Luo Zhan's heart suddenly jumped, and even he felt caught off guard. However, his body seemed to be unable to move. Luo Zhan looked at the man in front of him, slightly bent down, and gently, slowly approached. Lu Han's eyelashes were thick and slender. At this moment, his eyes were closed, and his long eyelashes were hanging down, casting on his white skin, looking very beautiful. Slowly approaching, Luo Zhan only felt a softness on his lips, and an indescribable strange feeling made all the hair on his body stand up. Suddenly getting up, Luo Zhan took a big step back and looked at him incredulously. Turning around, he immediately turned to the side of the corridor to hide. What was he doing? What are you doing? Luo Zhan, you're crazy. Luo Zhan's heart was beating fast. He quickly returned to the room and closed the door. Then, he leaned against the door and gasped for breath. Crazy, crazy, really crazy. On the sofa, Luo Zhan's eyelashes fluttered, and then he opened his eyes. Seeing the direction where Luo Zhan was hiding, she subconsciously reached out and touched her lips. Was that Luo Zhan? Luo Zhan blinked in disbelief. This Luo Zhan, who kept saying that he liked women, as a straight man, actually, secretly kissed him. Luo Zhan actually liked men. Luo Zhan was alarmed. He suddenly got up, threw the blanket off his body, and walked into his room. They had been living together for more than 3 years, and Luo Zhan had never revealed anything. Unexpectedly, he had actually lived with a homosexual for so long. What should he do now? Luo Zhan's heart was in turmoil. As smart as he was, he didn't know what to do. Chapter 731. Was he going to drive him away? Luo Zhan's heart was in a mess. No wonder Luo Zhan was 30 years old and had not had a girlfriend until now. It was no wonder that he often looked at her with a strange gaze. No wonder, Luo Zhan felt as if he had figured everything out, but at the same time, he also felt a bit of a headache. What the hell was this? A good friend who had lived with him for more than 3 years actually kissed him secretly. This situation could not be regarded as an accident, right? Luo Zhan patted his head in distress. Finally, he sighed, packed his luggage, and went out the door. Luo Zhan heard the sound of the door being closed, leaned against the door, and there was some indescribable disappointment in his heart. He seemed to be bent. Su Qianxi brought 3 bodyguards, Shuang Yu, Qing, and De. When she arrived at the Maldives with the children, they were a little sleepy and disinterested. Checking into the hotel, Su Qianxi arranged for the 3 little guys and Shuang Yu to stay in a double room, and Qing and De to stay in another room. The children were all sleepy, so she let them take a nap and went to her room to call Li Xiqing. There was no answer, and the mechanical female voice reminded her that the phone was turned off. Su Qianxi's little face was wrinkled, and she was in a bad mood. Li Xiqing actually turned off his phone. Had he already boarded the plane? Was he really angry? Su Qianxi suddenly felt a little regretful. If she had known, she would have followed him and asked him to turn down his work or stay with him. Or, if she had not refused him in the morning, she would not be so worried now. After making a few more calls and confirming that his phone was turned off, Su Qianxi simply stopped calling, but her mood was extremely low. The children slept until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Waking them up to change, the bodyguards took the children to play. Su Qianxi was not interested, holding the phone and waiting for Li Xiqing's call. However, she did not get a call from Li Xiqing, but a very unexpected message from a person. Luo Zhan, where did you go? Su Qianxi, Maldives. Luo Zhan, I saw Li Xiqing at the airport, but I didn't see you. Are you not together? Seeing this message, Su Qianxi felt even more depressed. She replied, he is going on a business trip, not with me. Luo Zhan, picture. Su Qianxi clicked on the picture, and Li Xiqing was there, hugging a beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. Seeing this picture, Su Qianxi's heart was in her throat. Startled, he stood up abruptly. The gloominess and worry in his heart instantly turned into anger. Su Qianxi, what does that mean? What was he doing? Louis Han welcomed the guests from afar. They have already left the airport. She felt even worse. Exiting the page, she dialed Li Xiqing's number. Shut down. What was going on? How could this be? He had lied to her. Why? Su Qianxi's heart felt like it was blocked by a big stone, and she couldn't breathe smoothly. Su Qianxi, what are you doing at the airport? Louis Han, going to Ireland for a business trip for a while. Ireland. He had said that he would prepare a grand wedding for her in Ireland. Chapter 732. Why was this happening? Could it be that Li Xiqing had changed his mind and did not want to give her a wedding? That was also true. After all, she had been out for so many years. No matter how great her passion was, it had been worn out. She should have thought of it long ago. However, wasn't he fine a few days ago? Was it just because of her rejection in the morning that he was angry, so he suddenly became cold to her? It didn't make sense. However, Su Qianxi could not find any suitable explanation to explain his sudden lie and his sudden abnormality. Su Qianxi held the phone, and her heart was indescribably complicated. What was going on? She called Li Xiqing again, but the result was still the same. The children were running around on the beach and playing very happily, but Su Qianxi's heart was indescribably complicated. What was this? He suddenly changed. What did this mean? A gust of wind blew, and Su Qianxi's heart was blown into pieces. Her heart was slightly sour. If he really had a change of heart, what should she do? Su Qianxi sadly found that she did not have a sense of security at all. For 4 years, she had been looking forward to his return every day. Now that he was back, she felt that every day was like a dream. Now, she finally felt that she had woken up from her dream. Mom, come and play. Li Jianqian ran over to Su Qianxi, took her hand, and shouted, Ersu and Mosin are all there. Let's play together. Su Qianxi looked at Li Jianqian's little face, which looked very similar to Li Xiqing's, and smiled gently. She let him pull her and followed him to the beach where Li Jianyue and Mosin were. What she did not know was that a pair of eyes had been staying in the dark, faintly looking over here with ferocious hatred. His eyes swept over Su Qianxi and the 3 children. Li Xiqing was really not there. So, it was time to do it. This time, after controlling Li Xiqing's wife and children, Li Xiqing would not be happy anymore. Su Qianxi noticed that someone was staring at her, but when she looked back, she saw the bustling people on the island. It seemed that no one was specifically staring at her. Was it an illusion? She didn't mind and quickly turned around to play with the children. When the children were tired, Su Qianxi took them to the chairs on the beach and ordered a drink for each of them. While waiting for the drink, she heard the waiter's respectful and fluent English. Miss Tang, your freshly squeezed orange juice. Hearing this voice, Su Qianxi's back stiffened and turned to look. It was a young woman with a slender figure. She wore large sunglasses that obscured her face. She was wearing a bikini and was basking in the sun. Su Qianxi looked at her and found that her facial features were very smooth. Su Qianxi took a few glances and found that his facial features were very smooth and regular. Fortunately, it was not Su. Su Qianxi let out a sigh of relief and laughed at herself. There were many people with the surname Tang in the country. Tang Menjing was now a wanted criminal. How could she come to the Maldives? How could she come to the Maldives? But she still turned around and said, take care of the children. Don't let them stay alone. The 3 bodyguards nodded at the same time. Su Qianxi bowed her head again and said to the children, remember to take care of your sister. Ersu, remember not to run around. Follow Auntie Shuang Yu and Uncle Ching and okay? Okay. After Su Qianxi said that, she couldn't help but look back at Miss Tang behind her. The woman smiled and raised the juice in her hand at her with a friendly and kind smile. Chapter 733. Su Qianxi also smiled at her to show politeness. Soon, the woman surnamed Tang stood up, and it was because of this that Su Qianxi noticed that this woman's figure was very good. Her long legs were curvy in both the front and back, and she had a typical S-shaped figure. At this moment, she was holding a glass of juice as she strode towards the inside. Su Qianxi was even more sure that it was not Tang Menjing. Tang Menjing was not so naturally beautiful. It should just be the same surname Tang. After the children finished the juice, they ran to the beach again to play. Su Qianxi also sat down on the beach, playing with the sand with them and helping the little guys build the castle. At about 5:00, they returned to the hotel for dinner. It was a buffet. Several little guys were sitting on the chairs, shaking their short legs, waiting for their mother and Shuang Yu to bring them food. Cheng and De sat on the side watching the children. Vaguely, they seemed to feel that someone was staring at this side, especially the children. The two bodyguards sat at the next table and secretly became vigilant. A beautiful woman, twisting her waist, walked up to the table where the three children were, and smiled kindly and beautifully. Cheng and De looked at each other, stood up at the same time, and walked over there. The woman apparently did not expect the existence of bodyguards behind her. She sat next to Li Jianyue and asked in Chinese, "Little girl, what's your name?" However, Li Jianyue had become a lot smarter under the education of Li Xiqing. She asked, "Auntie, what's the matter?" "Auntie, there are people sitting there." Li Jianqian also said, "There are empty tables in the back. You can go there and sit." "Well, when our mother comes back, there will be no place to sit." Li Mosin also nodded in agreement. The woman was driven away by several children like this, and there was embarrassment on her face. Finally, when she heard Li Mosin speak fluent Chinese, her face seemed to be surprised. "You children all have the same mother. This little brother seems to be mixed race. Is your mother or father a foreigner?" "Mixed race. Foreigner." Since he was very young, he had been listening to these two words growing up. To Li Mosin, these two words were terrifying poisonous thorns. At this moment, hearing such words, Li Mosin did not want to remain friendly and said unhappily, "Auntie, my mother is coming back. Please go." The woman sneered. Just as she was about to say something, someone placed a hand on her shoulder. A tall, rugged man stood in the back, looking down at her. It looked like it couldn't speak. He lifted her up and dragged her to the side. Qing wrote a little, but the woman didn't understand sign language. In the end, Li Jianqian translated for her and said, "Uncle Qing said that we don't allow strangers to strike up a conversation. Please respect yourself." No one could stand being chased away again and again. As more and more people gathered around, the woman's face turned white and then red. Finally, she stomped her feet and turned to leave. When Su Qianxi came back, she happened to see the back of the woman leaving. Wasn't that the one just now? After asking about the situation, she was alarmed. Do not talk to strangers. If a stranger approaches you, remember to shout, call Cheng, De, and Shuang Yu. Do you hear me? Chapter 734. However, Li Mosin did not seem to be in a good mood. He kept turning his head to look at the mirror beside him. His blue eyes, brown hair, and skin that was fairer than many people made him look out of place with the people around him. This little brother seems to be mixed race. Is your mother or father a foreigner? This sentence could not be dispelled in his mind. Even when eating, Lee Mosin had no interest in it. Even if he called them mom and dad now, he was not their biological child. Su Qianxi saw his strangeness and did not point it out. She dipped the conch meat in the sauce and put it in Mosin's small bowl. She said, "Mosin, eat the conch meat." The children liked to eat seafood very much. They could not eat too much, but it was still okay to eat it occasionally. "Mom, I want it too." Li Jianqian looked at Li Mosin's small bowl and blinked. His saliva was about to flow down. Su Qianxi glanced at him. "Finish the drumstick in your hand first, and then I'll make it for you." During the conversation, Su Qianxi had opened a few more and put them all in Li Mosin's bowl. There was none of the twins. Li Jianrui was unhappy and pouted. "Mom is biased." She looked at Li Mosin and said, "Brother Mosin, I want it." Li Mosin looked at the conch meat in the bowl, especially when he heard Li Jianrui's bias. The loneliness that had just appeared disappeared without a trace. A smile appeared on little Mosin's face. He dug one for Li Jianrui with a spoon and handed it to her. "Ursu, eat it." Li Jianrui was excited and shouted in a sweet voice, "Brother Mosin is the best." Li Jianqian looked envious and jealous, silently gnawing on the drumstick. Li Mosin also dug one for Li Jianqian. "Daisu, eat it too." Li Jianqian was happy. He hooked his arm and put it on Mosin's shoulder. "Thank you, Mosin." Su Qianxi's lips curled up. After eating with the children, she took them to the room to play. While the children were playing, she went out of the room and picked up her mobile phone to call Li Xiqing. It took a long while for the call to go through. As soon as she did, Su Qianxi heard some noise. It sounded like they were having a dinner. His fluent English made Su Qianxi dazed and confused. She blurted out, "Aren't you on a business trip? Have you arrived?" But as soon as he asked, he immediately regretted it. What if he said it? She clearly knew that he didn't board the plane. Li Xiqing seemed to be silent for a moment, then said, "No, I met my former sister, so I changed the date. I will go on a business trip tomorrow." "Are the children asleep?" "Not yet. It's only 8:00. Oh. I forgot about the time difference. Have you eaten?" "Yes, when are you coming over?" "I'm not going. I'll go home after the business trip. I still have things to do. That's all for now. Go to bed early." Then he hung up. Su Qianxi felt empty. What was wrong with him? He had been fine in the morning. Was he so angry because of her rejection? How did this happen? He felt that in just a few hours, the distance between them had widened. The sudden coldness caught her off guard. With her mind in a mess, Su Qianxi leaned against the wall, slightly dazed. After Li Xiqing hung up the phone, he picked up the phone. It was Cheng Yu. "Boss, I'm ready." "Wan Lily, Mr. Li, you will make the readers think too much." Chapter 735. Well, how is the hunter's preparation? Everything is ready and ready to start at any time. Cheng Yu was silent for a moment and asked, "Boss, is the Bo family who was with Tang Menjing 4 years ago related to Rong Rui?" Li Xiqing stood at the door of the room, holding the phone and did not speak. After a long time, he said quietly, "I don't know. You can ask Rong Rui." "I know you know. Is Rong Anna Rong Rui's cousin?" "I have always known that Susu is Rong Rui's cousin. This Rong Anna is the girl who used to live in the Rong family instead of Susu, right?" Because Susu's parents recognized her, the girl held a grudge, so she kidnapped Susu 4 years ago. They are the so-called drug trafficking gang, right? Qing Yu's voice was full of suspicion and fear. She asked one question after another, but she could not get an answer from Li Siqing. Her heart was cold. Finally, her throat was choked. She sighed and asked the thing she wanted to know the most. Is Rollercoasters also involved in drug trafficking? No. Li Siqing only answered the last question. His deep and mellow voice made Qing Yu's heart suddenly relaxed. She smiled through her tears. For the first time in her life, she was so scared by herself. Li Siqing noticed the change in her mood and finally said, "I'm hanging up." Hanging up the phone, Li Siqing looked at the time, said goodbye to the people in the room, and left. The next day, he took the plane to Ireland at 5:00 in the morning. Qing Yu had been so busy these 2 days that she didn't even have time to take off her high heels. Sitting on the sofa, she took out her cell phone and made a video call to Rollercoasters, who was far away in China. However, it did not go through. She called and found that the phone was turned off. What happened? When she was thinking, the hotel doorbell suddenly rang. She asked in English, "Who is it?" It sounded like a very young man outside. He said with a smile, "Room service." This voice, shocked, Qing Yu stood up from the sofa and opened the door. Rollercoasters was standing outside the door with his daughter in his arms, looking at her with a smile. "Mrs. Rome, do you need room service?" She looked at him for a long while, then chuckled, stood on tiptoe, and hugged him across her daughter. Rollercoasters' eyes softened. He gently patted her back and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Hearing this voice, she almost burst into tears. She forced herself to calm down and asked, "Why are you here?" "Your daughter misses you." Rollercoasters held his daughter and let little Pan Pan face Qing Yu. She was sticking out her pink tongue and reaching out to Qing Yu with her little fist. Rollercoasters smiled gently and looked at her with his amber eyes. He said in a low voice, "I missed you too." It was past 11:00 in the evening, and Luo Han was still not back. Luo Zhan tossed and turned in bed and couldn't sleep until 2:00 in the morning, but there was still no sign of Luo Han coming back. She picked up the phone and dialed his number, but the phone was off. What the hell? Where did this guy go? He had never stayed out so late before. Could it be that he had misunderstood? Luo Han didn't go out. Luo Zhan got up, turned on the light, and went into his room. He looked around and found that everything was neatly placed, but the suitcase on the wardrobe seemed to be gone. Opening the wardrobe, he found that a lot of clothes were missing. "Wan Lily, Mr. Luo, you scared our hen in a way." Chapter 736. What did he mean? When did Luo Han leave? He even took his suitcase and clothes, and did not even say anything. Did he go back to his hometown? Business trip? Or did he go on the National Day holiday? Luo Zhan only felt uncomfortable. Could it be that he found out about what happened in the afternoon? So, no way, this was the first time he had committed a crime. How could he be so unlucky? Besides, he did not do it on purpose. He couldn't control himself, and unconsciously, Luo Zhan felt something was wrong and picked up his phone again. After the phone could not get through, he opened WeChat and sent a message to him, "Where have you been?" It took more than 10 hours to travel from China to Ireland, and Ireland was 8 hours slower than China. When Luo Han received this message, he was at the airport in Dublin, at 11:30 p.m. Seeing this message, Luo Han looked at it for a moment and calculated that it should be 6:00 in the morning in China. He sent him a location message, then put the phone away and went to find a hotel. Luo Zhan was awakened by the sound of the message. He turned over and looked at the message. After seeing that it was Ireland, his heart sank. Did he need to hide so far away? What a shame. Eyes slightly down, Luo Zhan sent him another message. What are you going to do? Travel. No reply. Luo Zhan felt cold in his heart, as if he had been pinched. What to do? Lui Han seemed to have found out what to do next. Just when Luo Zhan was at a loss, the phone suddenly rang. It was Su Qianxi. Picking up the phone, Luo Zhan said absent-mindedly, "Sister-in-law." Luo Zhan, do you know where Li Xiqing went on a business trip? Ah, he went on a business trip. Luo Zhan really did not know. He didn't tell you. Su Qianxi heard Luo Zhan's words and was slightly disappointed. No, he seems to be angry with me. He has been a bit strange since yesterday morning. Impossible, he can be angry with anyone, but not you. He probably has something to do on a business trip. Don't think too much. Luo Zhan sat up straight. Did you take the children to the Maldives? Yes. He didn't go. Yes, Luo Zhan also felt a bit strange. With Li Xiqing's temper, how could he be alone when the family went to play? Frowning, Luo Zhan picked up another phone and called Li Xiqing. The phone was turned off. What was going on between Li Xiqing and Lui Han? The two of them hid at the same time. If he's on a business trip, he'll probably be on a plane. I'll ask him later. Don't scare yourself. Second brother is very capable. He'll be fine. After saying that, Luo Zhan realized that he might have missed the point, so he added, it's impossible for second brother to fool around outside. He only has you in his heart, so don't worry. Thank you, Luo Zhan. Hey, don't stand on ceremony. Be careful when you play with the kids. I'm going to take a nap. Bye. Yes. Hanging up the phone, she finally calmed down a bit. Even Luo Zhan said so Li Xiqing would not do anything, right? Feeling nervous, she waited for 3 days. During these 3 days, she resisted the urge to call him. She was waiting for him to calm down and call her himself. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.